2:38. I'm slugging these hard seltzers.
Live and in your life in a very impromptu fashion. For those that have stumbled upon and or found yourself viewing, listening to this great content, this mediocre content, I don't make your decisions on your opinions for you. All I do know is this is the Bottom Line Podcast. It is about 1:39 a.m. Central Time here in the great state of Oklahoma. My man joining me from the Eastern Time Zone, 2:39 a.m. I mean, to call him a good friend of the program is a massive understatement, but nobody wants a history lesson. It's my man, Eli Milligan. He's back on the program. Real quick before I let him do his little introduction kind of spiel and, housekeeping type shit. We are doing this live right now. I'm live on Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube. How this is going to work, we're going to do all of our reactions and hash out everything we thought about tonight from the Apex UFC 252. And then about halfway through, we are going to shift gears to the NBA playoffs. So right now, obviously, we are about 2 hours out of UFC 252. And before we dive into the depths of that, I'm going to let my man Eli Milligan spit some words out himself. My man, what is up, brother?
Hello.
How are you, dude?
I'm good. No, it was fun. It was a fun night. I mean,
did you have a good night? Your night was pretty hectic.
Yeah. I had to dip out in the middle of the fights. I was rather unfortunate, but I got to see the main event. And honestly, the two that I missed didn't seem to be surprises by any matter. So,
well, maybe not as far as the outcome or.
Yeah. I mean,
unexpected.
I don't really count one because it's just sort of like one of those unfortunate happenings of sport.
Correct. And let's not waste any more time. Obviously, the main event of tonight's proceedings was known as going into, let's be very candid and clear. It was known and or believed by a large majority of the MMA fan populace that the winner of this fight would walk out of the octagon, if not the undisputed, the greatest heavyweight of his generation, and the loser would not. Stipe Miocic gets his hand raised at the end of the day, 49-46 on two cards, 48-47 on one. Lots of angles you could take to start picking this one apart. Can I just say, though, before we do, how privileged I feel, in all honesty, how privileged I feel to have been as in-depth into and have witnessed this trilogy. I mean, dude, you go into the fifth round tonight, the final round of the final fight, with all that was on the line. And I mean, some people may have had it 3-1 for Stipe going into the fifth. I know you and I both had it 2-2. I know Verdict had it 2-2.
Those judges scored 3-1.
3-1.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did. But if you had it that way, 2-2, you're talking about a moment in time in which all of those stakes that were aforementioned come down to the last round of the last fight. I mean, can't script it up better than that. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Dude, it was a privilege to have watched. All three fights were great. Your thoughts immediately thereafter?
I feel like it just looked a lot like their second bout. And I
in
feel
ways
like
it kind of did.
Yeah, I feel like that played a whole lot into the result.
I feel like Stipe didn't necessarily pick up where he left off. He was digging at the body quite a bit. And
it's not so much
DC was picking
Stipe
up on
did.
it.
I think it's not so much what Stipe did. It's
Right.
what Daniel Cormier didn't do.
Okay. So now let's veer this thing right and go right down that wormhole, because there is something that sticks out in my mind that I can't quite get over as far as
Stipe had more takedown attempts than Daniel.
Well, not only that, someone I was tweeting with throughout that fight was mentioning that he believed that, what was he saying? Cormier wasn't being effective with his wrestling. I don't even know if it's that cut and dry. He wasn't attempting to actually use his wrestling and gain takedowns.
So I remember
a lot of work in the clinch, though, and in close quarters. But Stipe did seem to be, as far as grappling volume, the more active participant in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's surprising to me. So that's a great point you make. I think that's spot on.
I think watching that second fight, it was a mix of the two. So I remember when Daniel went in and he had that takedown where he literally threw Stipe on his back, right? And that was a changing moment in the fight. But right after that, for whatever reason, like, he went back to stand up, and like, you're going up against a guy who's a kickboxer. It's hard. It's hard to really like look at that and say like that's not your game.
Plus, as Cormier, from Cormier's perspective, even though it might not be his quote bread and butter or his game,
He's not bad. No, he's not
implied,
bad.
oh my God, he's not bad. He
No.
is a high level kickboxer, and I mean
Yeah.
the tutelage of training under inside of the American Kickboxing Academy walls kind of puts that stamp on it. However, if I'm Javier Mendez, and
You heard him.
to
You
my
heard him
own
saying
fault,
it. He was saying it over and over.
Right, but I mean, you see this time and time again with Mendez in the corner. What happened when Khabib was fighting Iaquinta, right? Like, he's father's plan, take him down. But he wanted to stand and fight with him. Like, I'm not saying that there's any type of communication issue in the corner between Javier fucking Mendez, Bob Cook, and company. That's as elite as a corner gets.
Mhm.
There is, make no mistake about it. But I don't know. It's the lack of willingness to attempt all the things he said he was going to do leading up, as far as grappling and volume in that realm. I didn't see it.
It wasn't there. That's exactly what he said after losing the first fight, was that I got away with what I'm best at, which is being on the ground and wrestling. And I think we talked about it when we were watching the fights, when we were just like, hey, you know, like, oh, how many champions aren't wrestlers or don't have a wrestling background?
Like 3 or 4.
Exactly. And I think that was just the biggest thing that stuck out, is just like, you're already at a disadvantage because you have way less of a reach. You're the smaller guy. The only way you're going to be really doing a lot, like, he hit 145 strikes, but like, the only way you're really going to be in there is by getting inside. But if you're going to get inside as a smaller guy, you might as well try to take him down. And it just
and that, another thing I'm glad you said, because that leads me into my next hypothetical. There is maybe a possibility, because you and I weren't in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You and I are neither a Miocic or a Cormier. We don't know this for sure. However, it looked at times, especially in what seemed to be Cormier's honey hole, his sweet spot, right in those close quarter split second exchanges, like how he caught Stipe in the first fight and finished him. Those were openings in which he could use his grappling. And again, it was absent. Now, going forward and to spin it forward,
the eye situation.
I mean, that's a scary thing. Hearing him say after that he couldn't see it, you see his eye clearly compromised, right?
Yeah, no.
You see that it's open, though.
There was a lack over here, too.
Right. But to hear him say, even though compromised, it's open, that it's all black, yeah, it's not good.
No,
it's not good.
I would.
You had texted me, too, and mentioned something Bisping-wise. I mean, I'm no eye doctor. I'm no doctor of any sort. I feel like that's a little extreme, and God, you pray and hope that that's not the case. But let's kind of spin it forward here. It seems that Cormier doubled down tonight afterwards, saying, if I'm not fighting for titles, I'm not fighting at all. Can't really blame the guy on that. Hell of a career. If this truly is it, you're talking about a guy whose only losses on his entire record
are Bones and Miocic.
I mean, you're talking about right now, as we stand, the two consensus goats in their weight class, like, and arguably in regards to John, including myself, the GOAT, period. So
you really think he's going to step up to heavyweight?
I don't
That's
think
the whole
it's
conversation itself.
I don't think it's formidable, and let's get into that too, because obviously that in very Conor McGregor-esque fashion afterwards tonight,
he just likes to be in the conversation,
and he's good at it, and that's exactly what Conor does, right? And he trolled brilliantly tonight, and I feel bad about it too.
He's not just Ben Askren. You know, he's like I'm going to say what I want, and you're just going to like accept it because you know who I am.
But with much more authority, right? Like when Askren tries to chirp dudes and like, boom, roasted, like, oh, you really got me there, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like plays in the background. John, he goes for the jug. I mean, especially now, hindsight being 2020, that tweet he had earlier tonight, quote, like,
it was you're gonna be you're really
can't
gonna lose
go
your
out
last fight in
an empty arena. Dude, you had to go there. But okay, John moving up. It seems at this point it's a formality. Here's how I envision this process going. To move up to heavyweight, especially at the highest level of competition in the sport in the world.
Francis or
No. He make no mistake about it.
He's gonna go right to Miocic.
John Jones could fight at women's strawweight. He's getting a title shot right off the bat, period, and it's warranted, no doubt about it.
Okay.
But I don't believe his next fight is at heavyweight. I believe, if I'm making a cut and dry prediction,
it's Reyes. It's
one more fight at 205, probably Reyes, because to move up to heavyweight, in particular, to move up to heavyweight with the goal of being UFC champion in an immediate future type of situation as the current goal, you got to lay out a blueprint. You've got to reconfigure your body, because it's not like moving weight classes. You're not jumping up 10 pounds. You're not putting on like a little bit. You've got to get to some sort of range to where you are not egregiously smaller than Stipe, and that's going to take time. So especially if he's going to do it right.
I mean, he's got genetics on his side, in the sense that he's 6'4", like he's also a Jones. So like
his brother had 18 and a half sacks last year.
Exactly. So
pretty
I think
solid.
Like, in terms of like matchup wise, it's perfect. Like it is. It's if Cormier was taller and in better shape, like I think like this is.
Well, I mean, but you could say that about a lot of guys, right? Like, I mean, if John Dodson was Sean O'Malley's height, like, oh my God. But I mean, regardless, as far as John going forward, I mean, that's the ticket. Like, that's what people have been wanting to see.
I'm willing to put 200 on John. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, and John at 235 pounds, like muscle
regular weight
based. No, at his walk around weight is what I'm saying. But
yeah.
I'm talking like fight week weight, weigh in weight, getting ready to go into the cage. I mean, we're talking about down to the decimal points of all of the levels of analytics as far as reconfiguring your body to move up to heavyweight, because your goal in mind is to beat the heavyweight champion of the world. That's going to take time. Like if people out there are sitting at home right now, high-fiving themselves and patting themselves on the back because they know by the end of 2020 they're going to see Stipe Miocic and John Jones, I've got bad news for you. You're wasting your time, at least for now. I do not see it materializing until the beginning of next year.
He's got to fight one more time before it actually happens easily.
And not even that, even though I do agree with that premise. Like I said, if you want to do this the right way and reconfigure your body, put on mass where you need to put it on, and become a real heavyweight, right? Like a real UFC heavyweight, because he is a natural light heavyweight. He's a pretty big light heavyweight, but he's a natural light heavyweight.
Easily.
He of all people, and especially in that gym and with his corner, no. I mean, if they're going to do that, they've got to do it, and they got to cross every T, dot every I. So, I mean, you know, for Stipe, I don't even think there needs to be a conversation. It has to be Ngannou next. The guy that's the odd man out and who it sucks to be right now is Curtis Blades, because the run that he's on and the position that he's in is all but defaced by the fact that he's got 2 losses to the guy who's first in line. That's a tough spot to be in.
If you are Ngannou, right, and you're John, and because I'm not going to
Ngannou or John,
both of you guys. Now I'm looking at
both of them at the same time.
You are both of them. Okay. Left brain, right brain. Now, say, because Ngannou is on a different level right now. He takes out Miocic, and you're John. Do you want to fight? I'm looking at.
But then what do you do though? Like, because let's make one thing very clear: the UFC has already shown that they have no problem passing on Stipe Miocic for an immediate rematch if it comes to that. They already did that to an extent, because I know they offered him the rematch for Madison Square Garden last year in DC, short camp, whatever. Regardless, though, no matter who the champion is, if Ngannou does even the score, which I think he has obviously a very real chance of doing. I think he learned a lot since that fight in Boston in January of 2018. I think that they're like guys who we've seen it time and time again, guys who get to the mountaintop and get push the fuck off, really, really learn a lot. At least the best in the world and the best champions in the world always have. Could Ngannou be of that mold? Only time will tell.
I just
However,
don't know if like
you can't not make that fight next.
No,
Is all I'm saying.
absolutely. I'm just looking at it like one is a fantastic matchup for John, that being Miocic. The other one is an awful matchup because like there really aren't many guys.
Ngannou is concerned,
there aren't really many guys like that who are pounders, but at the same time, it's like he also has to last 5 rounds, and John has the ability to just wear him down and just wear him down. And wear
you
him
just
down.
go to the Stipe.
Reyes
you just
fight.
go.
Look at the Reyes fight. That's exactly what he did. He wore Reyes down and just kind of
later on,
hung in there.
A lot of leg kicks, a lot of pressure, at least towards the end of the fight. But like, I mean, there's a path to victory if you fight Francis Ngannou. I mean, and if you are a human and not a gorilla or a horse, and you have a pulse, okay, you fit in the sample size in which if you are my fighter and I am your corner, guess what our game plan is today?
You're running straight
down, takedown. How many, like, what are you gonna do? Stand with the guy?
That works. It's gonna be the Usman fight. It's
like takedown. And I'm sure Greg Jackson, Mike Winklejohn will make it very clear from day one. If that fight were to ever materialize. No, stay away from knuckles touching face. Okay, moving on. I really fucking hate that we have to talk about this fight in the manner in which it happened. Here's the bottom line, all right?
I'm gonna let you take this. I'm not gonna comment, and we'll just move on to the next one because it's unfortunate, and we're just gonna say GG.
But at the same time, what he's alluding to is the fact that he had to step out of his house and proverbial viewership of the card to attend to a matter tonight. But what I will say, and back to you in a positive light, is you didn't miss a whole lot other than a very disappointing and anticlimactic ending. Sugar Sean O'Malley came into this weekend with a very real possibility of hopping on that UFC promotion rocket ship to the moon, right? If he would have gone in there this weekend or earlier tonight and ran through a guy in Chito Vera who is a motherfucker.
No, I didn't think he was going to. I thought this was
a lot of people didn't.
No.
And money came in on O'Malley late too. He was hovering around that minus 280, minus 285 range all day.
I wanted to bet on Vera.
He closed at minus 320. So a lot of money was coming in late on O'Malley. If you had O'Malley and were of any level of upper tier confidence, I'm sure that you wouldn't be alone in saying that you got this one wrong. However, here's where things get sticky. It's still kind of, at least I've gone back, watched it a few times. It's kind of unclear what exact pinpoint moment
I got it.
O'Malley became compromised.
I saw it. It's immediate. You see it.
Whether it's lower leg, knee, Achilles, combination of whatever, Sean O'Malley was absolutely compromised tonight and was the recipient of a TKO finish, courtesy of Marlon Chito Vera, who bounces back in the win column. And to be honest with you, should have never been bounced from it in the first place. Thank you, MMA judges. A lot of ways you could go after this. So O'Malley at this point should not at all be worried or have any trepidations about anything, maybe potentially outside of, hey, this is twice now that I've fought in the UFC and I have ended the fight with basically only being able to walk on one leg. At the end of the Sukumtov fight, I mean, that was really his viral moment where he had one leg broken practically and was interviewed by Rogan from his back. Yeah, regardless.
I don't know. I looked at that and I was just sort of like, that's super unfortunate. I hope the guy
very unfortunate. Nobody wants to see that end like that, you know?
No, I mean, and I know like Vera just kind of did what he had to do. It was kind of one of those scenarios. But I sent you the link, you can see it right at the beginning of that fight. You kind of see him. He loses his footing and kind of goes down, and you see him sort of like he's unstable on that right leg. And I didn't even watch the fight, and I can tell you his right leg
taken down for this
right here. I don't think so. Just
Hope
mute
not.
the audio. Mute the audio. The audio is what does it right there. You see how he's kind of like he's ginger on that right leg,
Right.
and
Right there.
yep. Now, a lot of the times, like the most likely reason for any sort of structural damage in the knee is typically a non-contact injury, just sort of you using your leg. And ironically, those are the worst kind of injuries.
Right. Like the Teddy
non-contact ones.
Bridgewaters of the world.
Exactly. Now, it's unfortunate, especially because like he was ready to jettison himself up the ladder. And it also sucks for Cheeto because like it sort of puts him in a compromised position where like
Right.
he's gonna have
It's
to
lose,
fight
lose.
somebody equally tough to
Not only that,
maybe even higher up the ladder to pull himself into a spot of contention.
Not only that, and while you're
It
absolutely
invalidates
right,
him.
absolutely, and while you're absolutely right, I'll even piggyback off it and go further. Talking about validating, this is not a very validating type of win for Marlon. You shouldn't take away from a win like this. And I mean, up to the point that the fight was finished, Vera was winning the round. And yes, O'Malley was compromised. And yes, O'Malley was
Vera was going to bring this to decision. I just bet on the knockout because I was just like, well, that right hook dangerous.
I could see a path, at least going into this fight, of how it could have gone to decision if both guys wanted to be super technical, because both of them can be when they want to be. But again, I mean, there's not really much to come out of this from other than it's just really a bummer. Like I know a lot of people wanted to see, and obviously including myself, a genuine and no controversy laced result come out of this one, so we could really see where O'Malley is at. And unfortunately, I don't think we got that tonight as a result.
But Vera's striking did look really, really good. For what
and you know what you're going to get out of Marlon Vera, right? I mean, this is a guy, as I said earlier, should have been on a 7-fight win streak coming into the night. Don't want to go down the wormhole of talking about the UFC rankings, but the fact that he's not ranked is a problem, at least coming into tonight.
And Marlon I don't think Vera,
he will be. He will be now.
You think he's going to take the 15?
Well, I mean, that's how the UFC rankings normally work, even if it is kind of flawed. And I mean, the whole system is flawed, don't get me wrong. But I mean, yeah, like if you beat a guy in the top 15 and you're not in the top 15, I mean, I can't remember a situation in which the new rankings come out and he didn't take said fighter spot. So, and he was ranked, in that right at the cusp, top 15 type of area for a while. But, this is a guy too, before the Song Yadong loss that I and many other people thought he won, he was on a 6-fight finish streak. That's not a win streak. He had 6 finishes in a row. 3 by sub, 3 by TK. I mean, this dude is a finisher.
2 Columbia wins right there.
And he absolutely hopped on it when he had the opportunity. he hopped on it when he had
I completely looked at that flag incorrectly. And I realized I was like, wait,
Ecuador.
He's Ecuadorian.
Dude, and O'Malley dyed his hair colors of the Ecuadorian flag.
Leave that shit in 2020. Legit.
He said, I mean, one of the things he said early on in his career, every fight, my hair is going to be different. How creative can one get with their hair, right? Like
creative?
Like if you're Jim Miller and you had the same premise and you're in fight 36, like what are you going to do now?
Your beard differently every fight?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know, but
that man definitely listens to fucking Tekashi 6ix9ine without a doubt.
Regardless, a disappointing result, I think, for the fans more so than anything else. As we continue to kind of search for what the potential ceiling of Sean O'Malley could be, and really Marlon Vera too. I don't think we learned a whole lot about him either in this fight, other than what we already knew.
Personally, I think he's too skinny for this division. That's
O'Malley.
Opinion. Yeah.
I mean, he can't drop. I mean, that dude's not making 125. Not at his frame.
I just don't. I don't know if it's like his inability to put on weight.
He's just a skinny motherfucker.
But like when you're getting down to that top 5, top 7, like he's gonna have to be able to get on the ground. I know he's like good at BJJ, but like
unproven in BJJ too. And like I said to you earlier tonight,
he's a brown belt, right?
Right, and all of the indications, at least from people behind closed doors and people going on the record, have all said that he can more than hold his own on the ground. And yeah, I do believe if he's not a black or if he's not a brown, he's a blue, or
I think he's a
somewhere.
brown. I think I heard Cormier say every time I see him, he's always on the ground. But like, I mean, he doesn't ever actually have to get on the ground in a fight.
He drills a lot of jujitsu, at least from how his social media appears. But again, hate to keep hammering this point home, but a loss for the fans. A win for the fans, though, in the form of sweet heavyweight knockout violence came
Give me your fucking money.
by way of the nation of Suriname, and the only fighter to ever reach the pinnacle of the sport from Suriname etched his name even further in heavyweight contention tonight. Bounced back in the win column with a big win over a former champion. So
good for him.
Very good for him, and it's always good to see guys, especially coming off a knockout loss like he had.
Mean, I told you, I watched that.
He fought fight. Like it too. He fought like it too.
Well, I watched that fight, and like, literally, what did I say? I said that fight looked like it was going to be one of these guys are going down. I don't know when, but I didn't know who it was going to be, because it was incredible to see like somebody actually be able to stand toe to toe with Francis and not be like in a scenario of
and not danger. Try to take him down.
No.
Like Stipe stood with him for about 3.5, 4 minutes in the first round, and then that was that.
He realized he was like, nope, this ain't it.
But he took Ngannou's best shots, which is obviously all the more impressive. And one thing, I hate to backtrack, that we didn't touch on talking about the main event. Does Stipe Miocic have a chin or what? He took some big shots tonight.
Yeah, DC. I mean,
especially in the first round.
He stood in with Francis, and like, I guess like we kind of discredit Cormier's ability to strike because he's a traditional wrestler. Not
this guy.
That boy hit hard.
That energy's over here.
I really like, as much as I love like us being at like 245?
Said it.
247, and just being around that crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. But then when you get to watch this and you hear every intricate detail of the corner work, you hear the shots, you hear the panting, the like just trying to catch, like the Chavez fight, for instance, like you could hear him like laboring. It adds a different level of the technicality that's involved with actually doing this. And
couldn't have said it better myself.
That's what you take away, especially from just going up the card and just seeing the way these guys are dealing with the various levels of stress and danger they're involved with. That exact
work of mindset in terms of the outlook on the sport is what drew me into its arms. It really did. Like the mental aspect of it, the chess game kind of analogy that you could put into it. How do I solve this problem while acquiring dire physical consequences? I mean, that's Rogan. That's my favorite Rogan quote of all time. MMA is high level problem solving with dire physical consequences. Mm-hmm. This fight in particular was a great example of that, especially for about the first 7.5 minutes. Yair Zinho and JDS both were very calm, very patient, very poised. They picked their shots effectively. Dos Santos, I would probably say for the better half or for the better part of the majority until the fight was stopped, was landing the better shots, was really attacking the legs early. But I mean, as we see, regardless of who in this division, regardless of who is in the red corner, who's in the blue corner, one lands clean, you could be going down. And a big fight is on the horizon, surely, for Mr. Rosenstrike next.
Does he go Blades?
I think, at least if I'm Mick Maynard, the man in charge.
It's either Blades or Lewis, but he's getting one
Blades Lewis. I think Blades Lewis has to be next for those two guys. So they're both out, in my opinion. Okay. I mean, how both of them have not fought to this point is truly a miracle, to be honest with you.
What were they? 3-4?
3-4.
Okay.
Maybe, I mean, once the dust is settled here in a few weeks with the rankings and Cormier pulls out of the USADA pool and they take his name off, they'd be 2 and 3 respectively.
So maybe, yeah,
but you got JDS right there. I mean, Jairzinho has two options at this point: either sit and let the deck kind of reshuffle, which does not favor him as far as time is concerned, because that will take some time. Unless the UFC goes completely off script and according to my plan of because my plan is the most important. If Blades and Lewis is not made, that would obviously be an avenue for him next. I just think where Blades and Lewis are, especially on the win streaks that they're on, and that kind of blockade in front of them of Ngannou and Stipe, I mean, those two guys are next up. Like, those two guys got to fight. So if that is the case, there's a lot of guys booked right now. Here are the rankings right
Volkov
here.
is really the only other option, I guess.
Volkov is booked. He's fighting Walt Harris.
Wolverine is still top 10. What the fuck?
He's coming off big win. He's got a main event in 3 weeks. He'll be fighting Sakai in 3 weeks.
So I look at this and like what I think is that, so obviously like he doesn't want to wait, right? But
well, I mean, not sure. Don't know that for sure.
I'm looking at it like realistically, the youngest guy in this division with the brightest future is obviously Curtis Blades, or
this man right here. But
Derek Lewis is getting up there. I mean, he's what, 35?
And like we know Derek Lewis's ceiling. Right?
You know what he's gonna do. I mean, realistically, like in a scenario where he's fighting Miocic, it's not a good fight. But if he has to fight like a Francis or something like that, then yeah, like it's feasible. But is he gonna stand 3 rounds with Miocic? No.
Well, I mean, it would be 5 if they fought for a title. But
yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Even,
like
that's
literally what I'm saying is that like I don't think he makes it past 3.
Here's the issue that Rosenstruik nor anybody in his camp can control. As I look at these rankings, everybody's booked. Heavyweights all have fights right now. When you look down the line underneath Rosenstruik will probably be 5 come Tuesday. And then Overeem is booked, and he's obviously already fought him. Volkov is booked. Then? Lewis.
Okay. Well, when he move up to? Oh, you're right. No, 2, 3. Yeah.
Volkov's booked. Sakai is fighting Overeem in 3 weeks. Oleinik just lost. Harris is fighting Volkov. Abdurahimov is fighting. I believe. No, he's fighting Gane. He's fighting Cyril Gane, who
Verdum is gone, right?
Don't get me started on Cyril Gane. That is a fight that I'd like to see.
No, I'm saying Verdum. Verdum is gone, right?
Verdum,
up, right?
Yeah, and he's probably not going to strap on a UFC branded 4-ounce gloves again. I think that ship has sailed. So yeah, really, honestly, it's either wait it out or hope and cross your fingers that Blades and Lewis aren't matched up.
I think the best move is to wait and you get one of them. You gotta because like realistically, like Lewis just won against the worst possible matchup for him. And yeah, I would imagine he's gonna sit there and try to wait it out. That would be the wise move. So he could get Blades, and that would be a fun fight.
If his corner were smart, they would probably take that approach. But moving on. So this was a shocker. Daniel Pineda makes his first entry into the UFC, and I do have to fact check at least from the year. It
was
14, as far as the year is concerned.
I think it was 24. It was 6 years, 14.
2012. So 8 years. Wow. Right here, UFC on FX1, he defeated Pat Schilling by rear naked choke in the first round. Wait. Okay. So 3 and 4 in his UFC stint, gets cut. Where you got 6 years, I know where you got 6 years. He spent 6 years from the time he was cut to getting back. So 6 years it took Pineda from, hey, we're giving you your UFC walking papers. 6 years, he climbs back. He has a short stint with Bellator, wins a couple, loses a couple. Goes on a 4-fight win streak, at least opposed to his last 2 bouts. I remember seeing the story. I don't remember exactly why, but they were both turned to no contests, so they practically never happened. Comes in on a 4-fight win streak and not only stops Herbert Burns, who was on his way.
Looked absolutely terrible.
And I'm going to get into that for sure because I have, a theory as to why that's not going to surprise a lot of people. But Herbert Burns looked damn near flawless through his first 2 UFC fights. Obviously, the younger brother of UFC welterweight number 1 contender Gilbert. Missed weight by 3.5 pounds, looked deathly awful on the scales on Friday. And it did cross my mind, even though I was supremely confident. He was my lock on the main card tonight, as far as winners go. And man, I mean, if you're ever going to chalk one up from solely off the eye test and go, man, I really feel like that weight cut took everything out of him. I mean, look no further than this fight. That's just my opinion. I'm not trying to take anything away from Pineda. I mean, Burns looked defeated when he was taken down initially, and the ground is his world, and that's very off-putting.
Well, Daniel Pineda, I don't know how I call him Michael Pena. Yankees. But no, he literally got right on top of him, and he didn't seem like he was intimidated by the fact that this guy might, turn us into a guillotine at any moment. I think that was the most impressive thing, was that like he was so confident in his ground game that he wasn't afraid of
an
assassin.
That's how you take out, and that's how you cash as a plus 280 underdog. Did
he get the fight of the night?
I haven't seen the bonus.
It honestly was probably what's it called? It was probably Rosenstruck. It was either Rosenstruck or what's her name?
So I'm gonna take guesses. I'm going to bet, because I haven't seen the bonuses yet. I'm going to bet DC and Stipe got fight of the night.
You think so?
I do think so. I think DC and Stipe got fight of the night. I think they're going to give Yandaroba a bonus.
That was incredible.
And probably Jairzinho.
Easily.
And the bonuses went to, looks like they're not here for some reason. Let's check Twitter. The bonuses went to, drum roll.
How many tweets did John Morgan put out? Let's see.
Wow. Okay, I was gonna say this honestly, very well deserved. Kai Kamaka and Tony Kelly were fight of the night. Great
we
fight.
Were gushing over this.
That was a great fight. That's very well deserved.
We were gushing over that. Honestly, like I thought like Kamaka was fucking awesome.
That fight was very, very, very fun. No doubt about it. 50K goes to Daniel Pineda and Verna Yandaroba tonight. Yep. Well deserved. And you've got to love when all 4 of the bonuses go to fighters that, I mean, I don't know people's financial situations, and I'm not going to comment on them, but it's good to see the 50K bonuses go out to people you would presume to be, less well off than I can't stand when they give the bonuses to like Conor McGregor and like other guys fighting in the main events. Like, dude, like what about the guy that got the finish in the first round that's making 15 to show and 15 to win? Like, what about, I don't know.
Yandaroba looked absolutely terrifying. Like, you had texted me saying like, oh yeah, this is a crapshoot, but like, she's never been finished. And I was like, yeah. Watching that, and she just got in position. She just sort of like took control and said, "Yep, this is what's happening." Tap.
That's your chess match right there. She moved into position. She found Mount almost immediately, and from there, I mean, it is just a matter of putting the pieces of the puzzle together with technique, and she did that beautifully. Those that have watched and known about Yandaroba coming up for a while are no stranger to the fact that she can do that to people and has done it to very many people in the past. That's back-to-back wins for her, both by submission. And I would imagine in that division particularly, she is going to get an opponent with a number next to her name in her next fight. Before we touch on other notable prelims and get out of the UFC space and transition to the NBA. And when I say briefly go over this, I mean, there's not a whole lot to discuss. Merab Dvalishvili tonight took out John Dodson. And when I say took out,
he didn't take him out. He chased him.
He tried the Merab approach, right? Like volume takedown, attempted 20. I mean, if you were to ask me, hey, pick one fighter in the UFC that could attempt 20 takedowns on any given night. I mean, I take half a second to think about it and give you Merab. And that's what happened tonight. And John Dodson fought a very apropos John Dodson type performance, circling away, looking for that one power shot that, I mean, John Dodson in fights he wins, he lands it. In fights he loses, he doesn't. That's kind of been his downfall, especially since moving up to 135, where guys can take his power a little bit better.
I don't really know. Like, I didn't really have a lot to say.
I was impressed with the fact. I make no mistake about it. Like, props to Dodson for being able to stuff 18 takedowns. He stuffed 18 takedowns on a guy that in his last 2 fights had combined to take down his opponent 25 times.
So I thought that there were a couple that could have been scored personally, but
yeah,
before you close your stats real quick, I want to ask you a question. I don't know if you've seen it already, but how many strikes do you think Dodson landed?
Significant or total?
Total.
12?
No, I mean more than that. I mean, he landed 31.
I mean, I was expecting less.
From what he landed, it was 27 to 31. So he landed 20 out of those 31 strikes, 27 were ruled significant strikes.
He stuffed more than half the amount of takedowns in apropos to the amount of strikes landed.
It looked like
that's a John Dodson fight, dude. It just is.
It looked like the Jim Miller Vink Pichel fight, where like, not in the sense that like, oh, it was a good fight, but in the sense that every time that Merab came in, he was just every time.
Yeah, and
just a slippery fuck.
I will give props
to a guy who's
Pichel.
5'3" is, as a wrestler, that's prime position. Like when you're in high school, the best wrestler on the team is typically like 5'3" and like 150 pounds.
I just want to know where the disconnect is between he and his corner and those close to him that advise him to keep fighting at 135. I mean, the dude was by no means Floyd Mayweather at flyweight. I mean, he got 2 title shots. The first time he fought Demetrius, it was, I mean, I believe Tapology has it in its top 5. It's compiled rankings as a top 5 flyweight fight of all time, even though Demetrius won. Dodson won. Now, DJ dominated him in the second fight. But that's just because DJ rapidly improves at a pace that I don't think I've ever seen before and anybody else. That's an entirely different conversation. But Dodson, again, props to him for stuffing 18 takedowns from Merab. Like, a guy that has not had difficulty taking guys down. So you spin it forward, and obviously, I mean, Dodson will continue to kind of assume that gatekeeper-ish role at 135. And I mean, I don't know if there is a division you would want to be in that role less right now, because there are some motherfuckers coming at 135.
I don't know. I looked at that and I was just sort of like, well, it's kind of seemed like the kind of fight where he was just like, yeah, well, I'm here and it is what it is. Like, I just don't see a scenario where like it's either too many people turn down fighting Merab.
I'm sure that has been an issue.
I feel like that's got to be it, because like
it's only going to get harder now.
It was worse than like 3/4 of the prelim fights.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it
wasn't a main card fight like that. I watching that.
As far as the quality of it, you're rolling the dice here, right? Like, you're spinning the magic wheel. You don't know when you go into a fight whether it's going to be the greatest thing you've ever seen or the biggest waste 15 minutes of your life. Like, you have no idea. Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou is the absolute perfect example, because those dudes went in there and stared at each other for 15 minutes. Like, and nobody in their right minds would have expected that. That's just the game that we play. Here, though, and with Dodson in particular, that wheel and that proverbial wheel I'm talking about and the options are
limited. He knew what he had to do.
Very limited.
He had to look for that one shot, because there's just, you got a guy who's got longer reach, fast. He's not faster per se, but better at getting.
Nobody south of one. Actually, nobody in the UFC is faster than John Dodson. Nobody. Like, and I mean, his size and his frame kind of help in that regard, but. I think we're spending way too much time on Dodson.
I agree. We said we were going to skip that.
Spinning it forward just quickly for Merab before we just touch on the prelims and move on. As you mentioned, there are going to be a lot of managers that are going to come down with sudden bronchitis when getting a phone call from Sean Shelby and being offered Merab Dvalishvili for their client. Like, that's going to be an issue, surely.
I mean,
Especially
a nice
because
fight
now
could be fun.
Timeline makes sense. I don't think Dvalishvili had very many scratches on him, and neither did Vera. Does that do a whole lot for either guy spinning it forward? Probably
Bad matchups
not.
for both of them. Yeah.
Do either of those guys come across as the turn down fight type of guy? No, not even a little bit.
No.
So if both of them are offered it, they'll both take it.
Yeah, I can see that.
But
I mean,
regardless,
Veer looks like he's ready to go gung ho.
and I mean, he's just kind of been hovering on that top 15 fringe for a while, and to his not to his fault, a lot of guys and opponents have fallen out in the past 2.5 years for Vera. He's had to fight some guys that were unproven and didn't have names, dispose of them all, and I really hope Vera gets the fight he deserves in his next fight. Anyway, so prelims down. I know Vince Pichel had a big win, improved to 5-2 in the UFC tonight over Jim Miller. We talked a little bit about Yandaroba. Outside of that, Danny Chavez coming in, big win in his debut. Lavinia Souza outpointed, I guess, Ashley Yoder, at least according to the three judges. I know if I were sitting in that seat, I would have had it 29-28 for Ashley Yoder.
I was going to. But I thought I was losing that bet.
But regardless, probably the other notable outside of, as we mentioned, Kai Kamaka and Tony Kelly, very deserving fight of the night recipients. They set the tone.
Porter should have got it.
You mean Daukaus?
No, Porter.
Oh, yeah. He looked fat. Dog, they said he weighed 290 last week. What are you doing? What are you doing, bro?
I think the best quote I heard was, "Yeah, he was sleeping when the call came in, and then he called back." Yeah, he looked like he had woke up,
dude. Yes, and it's all. I forgot about that.
It looked like some like the early UFC fights that you saw, where like.
Oh, dude, like early dark age heavyweight. And dude, we're knocking Daukaus a little bit here, just kind of picking fun at Parker Porter because
looked good.
Daukaus looked really good. He looked really
like he just had a gastric bypass.
Christ. What I also don't understand is how he is this pinpoint accurate punching machine on the feet. He is. Chris is.
Yeah, he looked like he hit like a cop.
His brother, stop. One of his brother Kyle, who fights at 185, is a submission specialist. All his wins are by submission, and all of Chris's finishes are by TKO. So I wonder how that works. But regardless, so anything else that we missed? Before we get into the NBA, I'm
down to talk about Yandaroba a little bit more because, like, she was fucking awesome.
She was, and she is deserving of a girl in the top 15 in her next fight. I believe. Yandaroba, she was someone I studied very closely coming into the UFC. I was writing my Octagon Jitters column at that time and profiling a lot of fighters making their debuts. And she really underwhelmed in her debut, came in with a lot of hype. She was, I think, nearly a 2-1 favorite against Carla Esparza, who at the time was ranked in the top 10.
Esparza's awesome too.
You get your UFC, you get sent your contract to make your UFC debut, and it's a fighter in the top 10. I mean, it says a lot. And she's not going to do very much on the feet, but I think her prowess, as shown tonight and in many other of her prior performances, that's not a girl across any division, across any discipline, that you want working her way across you at all.
No. She had a game plan. She got in and she did exactly what she wanted to do.
And submitted a woman in Felice Herrig, as you mentioned earlier, never been finished. Herrig is one of those girls that's in that first initial onboarding of fighters for the opening of the 115-pound division. She, like the Esparzas and the Namajunas of the world, Teacher Torres, they have literally been in this division since it was born. And she has fought literally everyone, and to this point, never been finished. Going to be a rough outlook for her going forward now, though. 3 losses in a row. Not good. But Yanderova will have a number next to her name surely on Tuesday, deservedly so. That's my favorite division in women's MMA, and I mean, it is not even close at all. At all.
I'm with you.
115 is super, super fun. So if you're coming to the end of this portion of the audio only podcast, we are going to wrap up the UFC portion of this said podcast. And if you are watching along, go ahead, stand up, grab a drink, make yourself comfortable, because I've got to let about 30 to 45 seconds of time go by so I can edit this podcast later and make the MMA rendition split off. So once again, if you're listening to this in the audio only format, we've got a lot of content coming out this week. 2 MMA podcasts this week. Obviously, I return with my, pinpoint accurate Contender Series breakdowns. We'll have one of those tomorrow. And then it is fantasy football primer week for the Bottom Line podcast. My past 2 fantasy football primer podcasts are 2 of my top 4 most listened to podcasts of all time. So I'm jacked up about that.
I might draft this Friday.
Oh man, we could spend way too much time getting into that. Regardless, thank you very much for listening. If this is where you get off, if so, we would like to welcome you back to the Bottom Line Airlines for your next flight, and we'll see you guys next week.
Au revoir, Shoshana.
All right, now this is where I'll edit it out.
All right. So you think I should take? I have my keeper set up, right? I'm thinking right now I'm set for Lamar Jackson and Kamara. We're punishing keepers this season, we decided. So we're going to actually deduct money for keeping a keeper, where it's like we're going to take the average price of the position. So I'm paying $17 for Lamar. Obviously, I'm keeping him.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to.
Now I'm conflicted between taking Cortland Sutton and Kamara, because I am in love with Sutton. But I'm paying.
Be very careful though, because you're talking about target share that is kind of up in the air.
Yeah, I agree. I'm likely going to take.
If Jerry Jeudy by week 4 has 350 yards and 4 touchdowns,
I won't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised, but also we could see a very quick reshuffling of that depth chart.
I would honestly, I feel like he's better in the role of Emmanuel Sanders in that slant sort of out routes.
I can get behind that statement.
He's a very, very accurate route runner. But let me shut up so we can transition.
Let's do it. I am going to get a tweet ready.
I was honestly thinking though that the what's it called? Yanderova versus Hibas. Ooh. That would be fun.
Yeah, it'd be great. I don't see.
They don't like putting Brazilians against Brazilians. I don't understand.
Well, Brazilians don't like fighting Brazilians. Okay. Like Brazilians are very reluctant to fight their own. It happens, obviously, like it, and in a lot of scenarios, it has to happen. But as far as like Brazilians' outlook on it, yeah, it's a Brazilian thing. They don't like, sort of like fighting their own.
The Israel Usman kind of thing.
I mean, once you get to the highest level, because of course, like if you live in Brazil and you fight regionally to make your way up,
you have
to fight other people like from Brazil.
5 Brazilians in the top 15 now. Hibas.
I mean, in what division, dude? There's Brazilians littered across every top 15. Oh yeah.
You're gonna have Souza's gonna move up. Yanderova's gonna move up.
Make no mistake about it, though. Like, I mean, there's not normally or generally an issue when trying to book a fight between 2 people that are Brazilian. It's just like if you were to ask a Brazilian fighter if they had a preference, they would prefer if they're given the option to fight someone not.
Yeah, understandably so.
Brazil, like that's the option they would give you. I'm certain of that.
Yeah,
a lot of, Brazilian fighters go on the record say that all the time. All right, as we transition. Thank you for listening to this rendition of the Bottom Line Podcast, episode 81. Cool. That was just a quick transition. If you've been following along with us live tonight, we are kind of doing a dual side thing-ish. UFC 252 took place earlier tonight, and we just wrapped up episode 80 of the Bottom Line, which was the full instant reaction kind of hash out there. And now we get in to something I'm
Ready.
very happy and blessed and privileged that we're going to have the opportunity to witness. However,
We got to talk about the bubble first.
I feel like you've got to introduce yourself again, though, first, now that we are beginning a brand new portion, at least in the audio only sector. Eli Milligan in the Rutgers cap and all joining the program.
While I'm a novice MMA fan,
Man, you're coming along.
I was a baseball fan. Baseball has now moved down the rankings.
I feel like baseball is your first love.
It is, but baseball sucks because pitchers suck now because the balls are juiced. But we're not going to get into that.
Rob Manfred sucks.
Yeah, fuck that guy. But also fuck Bud Selig.
Bud Selig was for the boys, though, dude.
Fuck Bud Selig.
Bud Selig was for the boys, though.
Basketball is my favorite sport. It has.
Okay.
Basketball has taken, I think, a leap within the last 2 years of becoming. Honestly, it has the potential to be the second. I think it is already the second most watched sport around the world, but
yes,
it has the potential to be
soccer.
Yeah, behind soccer.
Yeah, it's second in the United States behind, obviously football.
Basketball's gotten progressively better, especially with the pace and space. But what we got out of the bubble has been 2 weeks of I'm getting chills, just like 2 of the best sporting weeks I've ever seen, because the quality of basketball
works, bro.
Incredible, because the quality of basketball we saw was unlike anything else, and it was Game 7.
Okay, hold up. I gotta rewind. I gotta rewind you there. So that's where you're going here. You are of the belief that that's the type of product that was put out on the floor. Here's where I will go, okay? And here's what I will say. I am absolutely more than pleased with the product that was put on the floor. There's no doubt about it. I think that those that came into the bubble and the restart apprehensive and or curious as to what it was going to look like found out very quickly, if not night 1, night 2 for the respective teams, that these are the best basketball players on planet Earth.
Absolutely.
And they can shake rust off a lot faster than you and I can. So with that being said, however, I mean, I've seen some sloppy.
Absolutely. No, defense was not a thing here. But
no,
if I could put one notion down, any of you freaking losers out there talking about ratings, go stick your head in your toilet, because basketball is a millennial sport, and the one thing millennials don't do is have cable. Okay, let's get that.
Bingo.
Let's get that straight. Let's get that straight.
And that transitions,
take your ratings and shove it up your ass.
And that transitions into a beautiful point where I hop on your back for you to give me a piggyback ride here. And this is where I come from in saying that. Ratings, right? That is, ratings are to TV as follower count, like count, retweet count is to social media. And guess what sport is king of social media? And it ain't fucking close. The NBA. It's it's not a conversation. It's not a debate. They are the king of social media in major North American sports. And it's not even close to being close. I think that's a major advantage and a big feather in their cap going in to the bubble. And a topic I definitely wanted to touch on and get your perspective on before we dive into the matchups. And there are some good ones. The topic of racial injustice, the uprising going on in society. Look, I have not spent a single second on my podcast or on my program, my airwaves, what I distribute, speaking on this, because I have done it privately with people. If you know me, you know my take on it, blah, 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 blah. However, I just want to say, and I just want to get your viewpoint from the fact that it was very important to the players and the Players Association that this was a key and focal matter. Just as much, if not more, than basketball, right? That was kind of like the whole point, like just as much as, if not more, than basketball. Knocked it out of the park, a huge understatement in that regard, or what? Your thoughts on how the NBA handled this and paid tribute to all that is going on in the country right now?
I think it was an important moment, because if there's one thing that bothers me in general about sports, is that we'll go back to like 2014, Michael Brown, where I forget who it was, but they said shut up and play basketball regarding like LeBron, right? And I think this sort of misconception that athletes cannot be intelligent people is something that should die.
It's
Like
that's an unintelligent
it
mindset
absolutely
to
is. Like you
have.
have Dominique Foxworth over here who went to, I think he's got like I'm pretty sure he graduated Columbia or to some degree, or I forget where I think he might have been Yale.
Well, what
You
about my
have
man Myron Rolle?
Myron Rowe. You have, he's doctor.
He had to fly into a Florida State game middle of the third quarter
Yep.
because he was number 1 on the depth chart at safety at
Yep.
Florida State. And this is not like Florida State
who got drafted. This is championship Florida State. Like
yes, this is Jimbo prime recruiting
yes.
Florida State. Flies in and steps on the field from Oxford, England, where he was, dude. I'm drawing up a blank. Yeah, where he was being given the Rhodes Scholarship.
You know who else was a Rhodes Scholar? Who played football at Stanford?
Hit me.
Cory Booker, Senator of the United States. Intern for my mans. Not actually really a fan of him.
Keep making your point, bro.
No, but
you're counting.
I feel like that misconception. Like if you really believe that athletes cannot be intelligent, this isn't even a shameless plug. This is a point of validity. Is just take a moment, listen to CJ McCollum's podcast, because man's incredibly intelligent. He's astute, and he has the ability to, from a professional athlete's perspective, break it down in a sense that general people can understand. And LeBron James is going to be a billionaire in probably 5 years. You don't become a billionaire by being just good and athletic. Like, Michael Jordan is a smart person. LeBron James is a smart person. Patrick Mahomes is a smart person. These guys are all going to be billionaires, and they have leveraged their athletic ability to become very wealthy and surround themselves with people who understand how business works and grown and learned. And I think like what we saw in the bubble was it was an incredible moment of people who understood their power, because the one thing that the NFL has been really good at is submitting their employees to essentially submission. It's what that is. And the NBA is really powerful because the NBA association, I would liken it to that of baseball, in that if there's one thing the baseball is MLB is afraid of, it's the player association, because their union has become so strong. And that as well, that goes the same with the NBA, because without Chris Paul, this whole bubble does not happen. And the guys that
without Michelle Roberts, this whole bubble does not happen. Without Adam Silver, this bubble does not happen. Yep. The people in suits at the highest up of highest up you can go in the NBA deserve all the credit and more. Once again, funny how we continuously find ourselves in situations where we go, okay, throw China out the window. We're not talking about that. And that really wasn't Silver's fault. That was more so Daryl Morey going rogue. But regardless, once again, here we are looking at the NBA and their kind of public perception of them, rather, in a situation and or chronological time period where they're going to be under the microscope, hit it, knock it out of the park. And you don't do that with people like Rob Manfred running the show. And guess what baseball looks like right now?
Baseball,
yikes!
Baseball looks like MLS. It's not watchable.
What are you talking? Yikes! That was a shot. Are you talking like just from the product that the MLS puts on the field?
I don't.
In terms of saying it's unwatchable.
Yeah, I mean the MLS is cool because it's an equal level, but like, yeah, sure. If you're a high class European soccer player and you come to the MLS and you're 37 years old and gassed, like, yeah, you'll still be one of the best 15 players in the league.
Yeah, but guess what? The MLB's problem is right now with what they're dealing with is that they are not handling it as well as say the MLS did. That's a problem. Anyway, before we get way too off topic, we've touched on and hit on like the key focal points from a societal standpoint with the bubble. if there was going to be an organization that was going to pull it off with very minor, and if minor is the right word for it, I would say comical bumps along the road. Cough, cough, wings. Cough, cough, Magic City. Cough, cough, Lou Williams. Man, I mean,
and still no positive corona test. That's incredible.
There's a lot of credit to be given out here. Like, I mean,
they just got a saliva test approved.
I know.
They funded. Like, I'm sorry, and your concern is that people are kneeling during the anthem.
Props all around, dude. Props all around. Let's get into the good stuff, okay? How do we want to do this? We can strip it down, starting with the Eastern Conference.
Okay.
And obviously with the 1-8. All right. So
how about you give me your rankings, 1-8 that you saw out of the bubble, your takeaways initially.
The bubble. As far as like 1 through 8.
1 through 8.
In the playoff. Well, this is a sticky way.
Just the general play-in rounds, like those first 8 games you saw. Like,
still,
what did you take from that?
Still though, weird angle to take it as, because who played as if their lives depended on it, i.e. the Phoenix Suns.
Portland.
But like, dude, how can you watch the Raptors Celtics game and come out of that not thinking, oh shit, the Raptors might be absolutely fucked if they run into them in the second round? Because
that was sort of but the thing is, the Celtics have been absolutely just a Jekyll Hyde. They have been Jekyll
for a few years.
They have been Jekyll Hyde this entire bubble. Like, they could look like the best team on a given night and the worst team.
But that's what I'm saying, and that's my point, because I don't know if you can accurately rank based on what we saw on the floor, the teams just playing in the bubble, because hey, last night when the Thunder played the Clippers, Terrace Mann dropped 25. Coffee dropped 20.
Yeah, but like,
are either of them going to drop 4 again in the next 2 seasons? Probably not.
I think we just count like those last two games realistically for most teams. They just weren't. I mean, I'm pretty sure PG and like Kawhi didn't play a minute yesterday.
I mean, but like, would you?
No. Like,
load management, dog.
I bet
load management was birthed inside those walls.
I took Thunder. I took the Thunder and I took the Thunder spread in the under, just knowing that PG and Kawhi weren't going to play early on the day before it was even announced.
Did the Clippers end up covering the spread, even though it went to overtime? The spread was 6.5.
I got the spread. I won the spread on that.
Pain.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's start 1-8. Eastern Conference. You know, okay.
The Bucks look very
easy angle to take is sweep for the Bucks. Let's move on. Talk about the next series. I'm gonna take a unique and informative approach at it. They're playing their first 3 games at 1:00. Okay.
And Giannis is
what
suspended.
What does that say?
Nobody wants to watch that. I mean, listen, from what I saw from the Bucks, it was either they're rusty or they just didn't look good. The Bucks.
Do you believe Chris Middleton now when he said earlier this summer that when the lockdown was happening, because of the fact, even though he's an NBA player, let alone the second best NBA player on the best team in the Eastern Conference, he went on the record and said, yeah, even though I'm all of those things, haven't touched a basketball in months.
I could tell. I think he shot like under. He shot like 35% from 3, I want to say.
Guess what? We believe you.
Yeah, like if you watch that Bucks Raptors game, you could totally see it. When
as we progress through this preview, we're going to get into like the matchups that we believe and or perceive could materialize in the conference semifinals, conference finals. So we'll touch on potential Bucks and Raptors momentarily. However, the Orlando Magic have little to lose, right?
No, the Orlando's one of those teams that if you watch that Sacramento game, they can erupt out of nowhere.
And like, dude, are you talking about the game where they went like 10 minutes straight without being able to miss?
Absolutely.
I'm talking everything.
Aaron Gordon had like 4 threes. Dude, he's a career like 28% 3-point shooter,
and not the dude that I would consider a threat from outside at all. No. So look, do the Magic potentially have the wherewithal on their roster to take a game.
Yes.
Maybe, but that's not important because that's, in my opinion, a formality. I mean, the Bucks are going to win this series. Let's not bore you to sleep or chase you away from this podcast by delving on that too much. I want to ask you a different question instead.
Okay.
Does the aforementioned time slots, 3 in a row, I add, of the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference tell you anything or hint to you about how the NBA feels going forward with Giannis being the face of the league? Or maybe being apprehensive of Giannis being the face of the league?
I don't know if it has anything necessarily to do with Giannis. I think it just simply has. They just look lackadaisical. They look like they weren't. They didn't look like a team that was locked in for the playoffs. They looked like a team that was sort of all over the place, and they weren't sharp. The only person I could say that like looked like he hadn't really missed a beat was 2 guys actually. It was both Brook Lopez and Giannis. Outside of that, the rest of their team looked very sloppy. They looked bad.
Does Brook Lopez own best nickname in basketball? Splash Mountain.
I love Brook Lopez is
Splash
one of my favorite players just because to be that tall and to not be able to rebound is an incredible skill.
You're gonna make me lose my dude.
And then you watch his brother just be this grit and grind, bro. Like
how are you 7'1" and
average less than
2-time All-Star,
less than 6 rebounds career?
Bro, I think he had a season where he played over 70 games and averaged.
And he had 4 rebounds. Yep, that was like his 3rd season. I think he had 20 points a game. Yep.
Absolutely. How? Yeah, no, that's something that will never make sense in the history of anything.
His brother is a grit and grind center.
They've got to love being together.
Lopez was on the Knicks. He was one of my favorite players, despite playing like 17 minutes a game. I loved Robin Lopez.
Please explain yourself and why that statement was just uttered.
Because he's such a strange player. Like
all you had to say was Knicks, there.
He's great at defense, right? He's a great defensive center, but then he'll pop off and hit like these crazy hook shots where he's just like, and you're just like, wait, you guys are related. Why aren't you skilled offensively? And then you realize that he has the skills, but he just decides to just be the opposite.
Dude, goes back to what I was saying on this very live stream and prior portion of this podcast. The Dawkins brothers in the UFC, heavyweight brother Chris fought tonight.
Right.
8 of his 9 wins by knockout. His brother Kyle, who fights at middleweight, all of his wins are by submission. They trained in the same walls, probably at the same time with the same coaches. Tell me how that makes sense. It's the same thing.
How many games you got the Bucks in?
4.
Got a sweep. All right, I got them in 5. Yeah. I think the Magic take at least 1 there.
So we go to our. I just had it. We going 4-5. Oh, we're going 1-8 on the West. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get this Google sheet pulled up here. So we're going 1-8 in the West, dude. Go ahead and have your piece.
We're gonna get spicy tonight. Okay.
Go ahead and look at this guy. All right. Hold up.
I think at the very minimum.
Hold that up a little higher.
We are going to get spicy tonight.
Yes, we are.
I also keep a bottle of Tabasco on my desk. But
hot take time.
Now, this isn't the most. Actually, this is probably a popular take, but
it's not.
Portland is locked in. The Lakers.
That's not your take, though.
Look absolutely awful.
They don't look great.
The Lakers have no guards.
They have Alex Caruso. Fuck you talking about?
He's not bad.
He's 100% not bad.
No, he's not. He's just
the best
because of that receding hairline.
He's every YMCA guy that treated every game to 15 like it was game 7 ever. Like fucking dude, he is like he's Uncle Rico playing like squash. With
the crazy thing about it is like he's wildly athletic and it makes no sense.
I know it doesn't.
I've got Portland in 6.
Okay. Can I go?
Yeah.
No, do you? I want to let you
Oh
air
no,
it
I was
out.
gonna do a transition. I was gonna do like a Mike Greeny
Go ahead.
transition about
Go
talking
ahead.
about like receding
Keep
beach
going.
lines and just be funny, but no, you go.
What the you know, okay. I disagree. Do I think this is going to be a competitive series? Yes. Do I think the fact that while you said, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of defense played in the bubble, surely. However, take the bubble away, take coronavirus away, take the past 5 months of the existence we have all lived and experienced away, and just act like the NBA regular season and postseason played out as normal. What regular season game are you gonna see defense in?
I
Zero.
I don't
None
know.
of them.
I look at it less about the defense and such, and also that plays into the hand of Portland because they don't play defense. My thing is Portland has a better
So
roster.
hold on, let me make sure I have this. That's another thing we can debate. But did you just say? Let me just make sure I have this right. Did you just say Portland's lack of ability to defend works in their favor? So,
Yeah,
in essence, their ability to allow the Lakers to score helps them.
I'm gonna quote the great Mike D'Antoni
Okay.
and say you don't need to play defense if you outscore him.
Okay.
Um,
Here's my issue. Only living, breathing human being that wears a Portland Trailblazer uniform that can even step to LeBron defensively or do anything to him over a 7-game period. His name's Trevor Ariza. Guess what? He ain't flying Bubble Airlines. He opted out. He's not there. Who's
the
next
thing
guy
is,
up? Who are you going to task with having to chase LeBron for a full 7-game series?
you don't have to. So I don't necessarily think that like I think we're
The answer
putting.
is no one, by the way, but
I think the concept of trying to chase down LeBron is not necessary because at the end of the day, somebody's gonna have to be tasked with guarding Dame and CJ. Likely,
okay. And then
it's
what?
gonna
Who are you
be
going to throw on
LeBron.
Anthony Davis?
That's the thing. What I'm getting to is the fact that both of these guys are going to have to actually play defense. The one thing you can look at, like Anthony Davis's season with the Lakers versus his previous seasons, is he's not grabbing boards. He's not on the
Okay,
block. He's playing a lot on the perimeter. And number two is the fact
as
that
he
like
should.
he's also not getting blocks. He's also not protecting the paint. He's not playing defense.
But what alley are you leading me down here, bro? Because
My
if
point
you're
is
leading
that
me down
if
an
they're
alley
both
in which Yusuf Nurkic or Zach Collins are going to win this series for
no.
Portland, I got
What I'm
news for you, my man.
what I'm saying is the fact that not so much Zach Collins. Zach Collins is more of a I'm gonna grab boards and sort of like just be in the area. He's more of your defensive anchor rather than Nurkic.
Will say though too, Nurkic has looked good.
Which is exactly, and essentially what I'm saying is that they've got to play defense. The Lakers, if they want to beat Portland, they have to play defense,
And they will.
But with that said, LeBron is going to have to guard one of those guards, and Davis is going to have to be on Nurk. The fact that both of them are going to have to exude that much energy to play defense, like we've seen it even like last year or 2 years ago, rather, and 3 years ago, LeBron has to take plays off to stay with the momentum to be able to be efficient offensively. And he's going to have to play 40 minutes of defense every single night and then have to play, 40 minutes of offense. And the one thing that Portland has for them is depth, youth, and guards. Lakers don't have anybody in the guard. Like, would you going to put
one of those
Dion
three
Waiters
things
and
they
J.R.
most
Smith?
certainly don't have our youth. This is an old team. We're talking about with the Lakers. That is an old roster.
Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee.
I think that might, may or may not have had something to do with or play into, their kind of sloppiness in the restart. These guys are not this is not the youngest team in the NBA by any stretch. In fact, it's the opposite. They are one of the oldest, if not, I don't know off the top of my head, but wouldn't be surprised if they are by average the oldest roster in the league.
Yep.
So it's very understandable to approach analyzing how they've looked in the bubble from the standpoint that I mean, these are older guys with more mileage on their body, but we're making excuses, and we're 8 games in at this point. This is what everybody signed up for. The Lakers are not going to lose this series, in my opinion.
Do you believe in momentum?
I do believe in momentum, but that's not where I'm going here. And plus, I mean, if you want to talk about momentum, Eli, be honest with yourself. They were a couple of baskets and/or possessions away from losing to a team that literally had to sign half their roster to be there.
They weren't going to be there, though. Had Dame hit those free throws that were completely uncharacteristic of him against the Clippers, they're not in that scenario.
They almost lost that game. They almost lost today to a team in the Memphis Grizzlies that have literally lost their second and third best player.
But you saw Melo hit that shot. You saw Dame come in, drilling threes. You saw CJ come in late at the game. They are locked in. And at the end of the day, we're talking about the 22 best basketball teams in the NBA. Every game should be close.
The downfall of the Blazers in this series comes down to this aspect. The highlights that I've pointed out from my vantage point, there's going to be difficulty in containing LeBron, especially, I mean, this is playoff Bron we're talking about now. It's not 0 dark 30, turn off my phone mode this year, I guess. However, I mean, I'm not saying you're acting like this, but your language and your words are depicting that you believe almost that Portland is the only team locked in here. I mean, the Lakers are going to be locked in too, obviously.
But LeBron's 37 years old, man.
And he led the league in assists.
Yeah, I mean,
that's another thing that I was going to say in contrast.
Who's their point guard? Rondo?
LeBron.
That's my point. But
the guy that leads the league in assists.
But he's running high screens. I mean, he's basically like they put a team of marginal shooters around him. Like, of course, like, listen, Kuzma's been hot and cold, but like Kuzma's not keeping up with Melo. Melo is going to embarrass Kuzma the entire, and like Melo is also.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that, and I especially think it's going to be compromising on the defensive end of the floor too, where there's another liability out of that.
Skinny Melo's here, bro. Skinny Melo.
Okay. Well, okay. So Portland in 6 for you. I'm gonna go Lakers in 6. I do think that the Blazers have potential to not only make this interesting, but take years off the life of a team, as aforementioned, is old. This is a team that has a lot of miles on them across the board. Portland is going to do some damage. And by the way, real thing, want an example? Golden State's playoff run last year. You want to tell me that minutes, management of said minutes, and overall health doesn't matter in the play? Okay. Come again next time as we proceed. So this guy, Mr. Tabasco Hot Take, has the 8-seeded Portland Trailblazers winning in 6 games. We all know that's not going to happen. Okay, so
putting 50s tomorrow.
God,
odds aren't out yet.
I'm putting it there.
Dude. I literally have Raptors Portland as one of my like finals picks for my bets. $2.
We've got to keep going, Charles Barkley. But holy shit, this series could be fun. Clippers Mavericks. As we'll stay in the West for the 2 and then move back to the East. Holy shit, every single game in this series has the potential to be close, fun, competitive, high-flying, high-scoring. The Clippers, though, the experience, the depth, the ability to hit the offensive glass, Montrezl Harrell returns, and their overall ability to rely, maybe not so much rely on, but can have accountability invested in a bevy of guys in multiple rotations that the Dallas Mavericks just simply roster-wise don't have. And,
may I have the floor to deliver a eulogy?
Absolutely. After I just make one last point, the Mavericks, for all intents and purposes, from my perspective, are in that piece away from being NBA championship contender level, especially with another offseason under the belts of the ever rapidly developing Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. However, if they are going to have their time one day, and many believe that they will, it ain't right now, and it is certainly not coming against the team they're playing.
So I just want to say something.
Say it.
Kristaps, you deserve better. You shouldn't have been drafted by the Knicks. But you also should not have been traded for Dennis Smith Jr. You deserve better. And how you're playing genuinely hurts me in my heart because I knew you were special.
Sad Knicks fan.
And Porzingis dropping 35 a game, like
he's averaging. I think he's averaging like north of 30 and 16 in not only the bubble, but I think the 5 games leading up to the bubble.
He looks
what?
Like he looks the way he looks. He looks the way he looked this season. He tore his ACL. He was on a tear. I remember just on an it was his 3rd season in the league. Just the Knicks were like on the bubble for the 8th seed at the time. It was right after Melo was traded, and he looked different. He was locked in on defense. He's not so much locked in on defense anymore. He seems to have decided, like, it looks like the philosophy that Rick Carlisle is going for is more let's outscore. Rightly
you
so.
have to. You want to talk about a team that doesn't play defense? The Dallas Mavericks.
But imagine like just striking that notion that defense matters is what the Mavericks do, because they are just
like
at
what?
any given night you could have 30 and 50 out of Luka and Porzingis.
I was about to say, like, they're like looking at you like defense. Like, we got this European kid over here that'll say fuck your defense. Dude. I mean, obviously, dude, I want to say this too and ask you this question. We may or may not have had this conversation in the past. We've had many conversations about many topics on sports that it's easy to forget. So forgive me if we have. Is Luka Doncic the best 20-year-old basketball player we have ever seen? And I am talking LeBron James, and I am including, well, I mean, Michael Jordan was still at North Carolina. Is Luka Doncic, given what we saw from him this season, the best player at the age of 20 in the history of the game of basketball? Yes or no?
So I'm gonna dismiss LeBron from the conversation, just because, like, if we're gonna talk like what we've really seen, we were young. We were like 2003. We were so young that it's hard to really understand how great he was.
You can go. I'm not saying go back and watch all 82 games.
Yeah, maybe Derrick Rose would be like the likely comparison to Luka.
But Derrick Rose at age 20?
In terms of just recency bias, you know what I mean?
But at age 20.
At age 20, no, Luka's fucking insane.
I think we saw the most skilled player at the age of underneath the legal limit to drink we have ever seen. He's
got a little.
Tell me how,
and I absolutely love it.
He's got like a sly, like fuck you about him that is so poised and so collected, and playing with old and grown ass men in, you know, what many people consider to be the 2nd or 3rd best league in the world in Spain, from the time that you can drive a car for the first time. Watch LaMelo Ball when he gets drafted into next. People are going to say, like, I mean, this kid looks like a kid that has already played against grown ass men.
Yep. That's the one thing that you can see when you got guys coming out of the NCAA is like their inability to deal with the physicality of the game.
And they've been alphas their whole life, right? Yep. Like you are dunking. If you're in the NBA, there's a great chance you're dunking in 7th, 6th grade.
I got dunked on by Scotty Lewis once. That was cool.
Good Lord. Nice.
Yeah, the kid was like 13.
A kid that was in my area in Fort Wayne. I don't remember his name off the top of my head because he fizzed out of basketball in high school, but he was dunking in 7th grade. Basically what I'm saying is
dunking on a 17-year-old. That's how that went.
Some of these guys, it's just in their genetics, right? I mean, especially if you are the type of human being that is of the caliber of playing the NBA. Where I'm going with this is Luka possesses an intangible aspect of his game that, I mean, it's Magic-esque. It's Stockton-esque. He sees the floor. Another conversation we were having earlier, hypothetical. He sees it like Bobby Fischer in a chess match against Ray Charles. I mean, he's 8 moves ahead of you. He knows what you're going to do before you do it. He's got that killer mentality.
I think we're probably both in unison in our thoughts on this pick. I got Clippers in 6. I
I got Clippers in 5, but I wouldn't
I
be surprised if every game is decided by single digits.
yeah. I'm so I think like this is the perfect matchup for him in terms of growth, because what the Clippers can send something at Luka that no other team can send, and you have 2 All NBA defense wings. That it's
It's a luxury no team in the NBA other than the Clippers
no.
have.
These guys are like, if one gets tired or one needs to rest, they're gonna rotate them in and out on Luka all night,
Plus,
all night.
is this like a myth? Am I like creating this in my head? Or do you think that there is something to this question I'm about to ask you? Are we really about to see the Clippers step on the gas here? And what I mean by that is we have known all season long, as we mentioned earlier, they birthed load management.
Mm-hmm.
As we've known all season long, the Clippers could give -5 fucks about the regular season.
Paul George and Kawhi played under 18 games together this season.
Perfect example. Are we going to see these guys? Because we thought coming into the season, you look at it on paper, this roster that is assembled has the potential and the talent defensively to shut guys down. They didn't do that this year. They were middle of the pack in all defensive categories, defensive efficiency. They were average, middle of the pack. Are we going to see in the playoffs, even from the gate, foot on the gas?
I think it will depend on game 1, but I think they have the perfect coach to oh wow, I've been putting these in wrong. Hold on.
I was hearing some Doc Rivers slander on CBS Sports Radio the other day, and I was not appreciating it.
They have the perfect coach to really push that forward, because a guy who's played on great teams and coached great teams, I think he understands, especially as guys start to age, from what he saw with like Pierce and Garnett and Ray Allen, of like how there's sort of a shift in the mentality late in the season that they get. Like, he sees these guys, he understands these guys have that instinct. They know what they're doing. I just have to let them be ready and unleash them. And despite all of this, like, they still finished the 2nd seed playing with essentially 1 star a night and a great roster built around them. So, and
I mean a great roster. This is the deepest team in the league. This is rotationally the most balanced team in the league as far as offensive and defensive prowess. I mean, given the candid, and I mean very candid viewpoint you have on the Los Angeles Lakers going into the playoffs, I think it's a consensus at this point. I believe most people are going either of the LA teams to win the West, right? Obviously, you smoked some meth today and you got the Blazers in 6. and so what I'm saying,
I have realistically, my main pick is like, I think I have Raptors and Clippers as like my other pick.
We're talking a lot more highly of the Clippers here, you and I are, than we are the Lakers. And I'm going to spoil it right now, because if you follow me on Twitter, talk to me about sports, you would have known this in October of last year. The Clippers have been and are my pick to win this whole thing. And here's my last question about the Clippers before we move on to the 2-7 in the East. Kawhi Leonard ends this postseason as the only player in NBA history, 3-time NBA champion, 3 different uniforms, 3-time NBA Finals MVP. Have you ever seen some shit like that in your life? That is insane. That is fucking insane.
So I think this past postseason is probably like my favorite postseason I saw in years.
You talking about free agency and the movement of the league?
No, the postseason. Like, I'm talking like Kawhi's like postseason, legendary. Like
the shot against the Sixers.
I mean, it's got to be up there. Like, I would say in like the top 5. Like, he's up there with like 2 of Jordan 6's best postseasons, because he was just on a different level, playing on one leg, but on a different level, because he had that quad injury.
He did, and it was bothering him big time.
And he definitely had some help, because he just had some incredible performances out of like Lowry and Van Fleet.
It was Pascal Siakam. I feel like in those finals really asserted himself to the point where once Kawhi left, like he was. I don't think anybody was having Kyle Lowry come off the tip of their tongue when talking the face of their franchise anymore. Like,
at all.
that is him.
I would say like the difference between the Raptors and the Clippers at this point in time is Paul George. Otherwise, like if you took Paul George on the Clippers and Kawhi on the Raptors, they would be very evenly matched teams. Obviously, I'm going to go with like the assassin out of Kawhi rather than like
the Kawhi on that too.
I'm going to let somebody shoot in my face and Paul George. But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Did I like hit a open window?
No, I was trying to zoom in really close on Portland in 6 just so I could just,
I don't know. I'm with you with the Clippers. I think Clippers do win overall, but it's a matter of can they shift that gear.
And nothing tells us outside of the lack in evidence that we've actually seen in the regular season that they won't. Okay, moving on. Here's a series that we can kind of breeze through rather quickly. We'll say this: the Nets were a nice little surprise in the bubble. 5-3 under interim coach Jacques Vaughn. I mean, dude, next season, bro, I would say that it would be a catastrophe if they are not top 2 at worst in the East.
I would say
and riding to the Eastern Conference Finals.
3 out of 4 of their best players are gone. I also want to say Karis LeVert's getting traded.
4 of their best
Dinwiddie is their 3rd best player or their 4th best player.
Can we just be very honest about one thing? Karis LeVert is cold.
He's getting traded.
Dude, bruh, that man is nice. Yeah. He is nice.
The problem is putting him next to Kyrie just doesn't work, though.
No.
You have to have
Dinwiddie to a fault kind of doesn't either. But here we are again in the same fucking situation and scenario with a Kyrie Irving laced team. Look at the numbers when he's not on the floor. Look at the numbers when he is on the floor. That's weird. All of the numbers look better when he's off. Or don't change very much. Where have I heard this before? Oh, Boston. Oh, Cleveland. Like,
I just think
been there, done that.
Kyrie's issue is going to be the defense aspect, and that's why Karis is going to have to go. But I would think like if there's any place that he could go, be Indy. I am a big Depot truther, and I think Depot needs to get out of there. And
Indiana?
Depot to the Nets for LeVert, straight up.
Indiana's running things soundly.
No, I think they're
doing a good job.
He doesn't look comfortable playing at the 3, and he could definitely be better used at the 2, where he could use his size and his speed.
This is a natural position.
Yep, and he's also a great facilitator. He's a point guard in college, so like you put him next to Kyrie. Now that's a beautiful duo. One guy, he's going to be able to cover for Kyrie on defense while also playing off. He's comfortable playing off ball because he's playing off Brogdon.
You could argue that's the best aspect of his game is what he does off the ball.
Yep,
gets open, set screens.
I'm putting Depot as my number 1 trade target for next year on pretty much like 5 different teams.
So on the topic of Karis LeVert being traded and how it relates to this series, it obviously comes from the standpoint that the guy is not being traded at all because he can't ball. Quite the opposite. He's being traded because Eli is of the belief that he could potentially be traded because he can ball. And I think there's a real possibility of that too. Shifting to the Raptors. There have been many NBA head coaches and general managers I've read amongst the archives of articles I've read since the bubble kicked in that there's not a better set game plan. How are we going to attack this team? What are we going to do differently that we did? There's no team that does it better than Toronto.
Nope.
Not one. You'll get if you look hard enough and read hard enough and keep your ears open, you'll hear there have been many coaches and general managers in the NBA that have gone up that have not had a problem going on the record saying that. They are brilliant tactically.
They're my pick for the finals. I don't without a doubt. There's something magical. It kind of reminds me of like that 2013 Spurs team. Was it? Or was it 2014? No, it was 2013 because 2014 was Warriors. Yeah, that 2013 Spurs team that came back after that summer with Pop where they were just moving the ball beautifully. And it's sort of like this. It's a beautiful thing when you have 7 guys on the roster that could be the leading scorer on any different night.
A roster in which has been configured exactly that way. And it gets contributions from all sorts of guys. I mean, yes, as we talked about, there's going to be guys in situations throughout the bubble, or at least leading up to the playoffs, that they wouldn't be in normal situations, i.e. Stanley Johnson being the guy to take the last shot. Yeah, Stanley Johnson being the guy with the ball in his hand against the Sixers the other night, goes to the hole, got a
That
good
was
look,
scary.
cleaned up off the miss, and finished at the
He
rim.
was so reckless with the ball.
But I mean, but he's a guy that's very good at creating offense for himself and always was. That was his MO when he was at Arizona. This is a roster that's got a lot of guys that can step up and
Matt
make a
Davison
difference.
hitting big threes.
You know, Marcus Saul carving out a little nice role as
They
well at
look
the latter
good.
ages of his career.
Norman
Nick
Powell.
Nurse, Nick Nurse would be my vote for coach of the year. This is coming from a Thunder fan who has been scarred by Billy Donovan, and we'll get into that towards the end. However, took
We were
a
calling for
step
his
back.
job like last 3
I was
years.
calling for his head. Last year, I was absolutely calling for his head. Dog, you're telling me 3
We've
years
been
in a
calling for
row?
his job like 3 years in a row, I think.
Well, last year it got to the point where I'd fucking had enough. Like dude, you had a roster, 2 of the 3 years of said roster in which, no, all 3 years, because his first season was with KD. No, actually, first season was with KD, and then 3 years after that, you had a roster in which 2 of those 3 years, you had players in Russell Westbrook and Paul George that were undeniably top 5 at their position in the league, and you can't get out of the first round against an inferior opponent. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
The one thing you don't
You're
want to
telling me the
acknowledge.
Utah Jazz were better than the Thunder
No.
on paper last year, or
No.
2 years ago? You telling me the Portland Trailblazers, as depleted as they were, and even though as good as Damian was in that series, on paper, as a roster, were better than the Thunder
I
last year?
completely agree.
The answer is fuck no, they weren't. Fuck no, they weren't.
I think this is one of those situations where it goes past the win column with the Raptors.
I mean, and that's a statistic in which, dude, look up. When did we wake up and see that the Raptors are now 2.5 games out of the 1 seed from the Bucks?
Their culture.
I feel like it was yesterday, and they were 10 games back, bro.
The way you talked about Stanley Johnson, I presume you watched that Sixers Raptors like bench game, that bench
work.
fourth quarter. That was one of the most fun fourth quarters I've watched. It felt like watching like an AAU game.
Chalk that one up too is another thing that's been great about the bubble.
Yep.
The benches.
Yep. I think like
Phenomenal.
one of the things that stood out the most though was outside of Stanley Johnson's like reckless ball handling, the poise that their bench played with. Like you watch the Sixers bench, and the only guy out there that was like a real rotation guy was Nito. And then you had these guys who probably play like a combined maybe 11 minutes a game on average on the, like you had the bottom of the bench, but these guys, their ball movement, their switching, the way they were just running their plays, like you could tell that these guys were playing against that one team, the first team, every day, and they were learning, and these guys were bought in. And I don't know, man, I love the Raptors. I think they are the best team in the Eastern Conference, like bar none.
Bar none.
Guy on the right.
Yeah, you like that? I feel like, I mean, that's you brought out the Tabasco for it. You gave the people a little dabble.
Listen, this
hot
isn't
take.
a spicy take. This is
I feel like you saying bar none, the Toronto Raptors, who probably have not spent a day in the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, are bar none, head and shoulders the best team in the East. I feel like that's a hot take.
I mean, you watch the Bucks. I watch the Bucks.
I think they could beat Milwaukee. I think they're capable of beating
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
On that team who looks like he's here to play, and it's Giannis. And Brook Lopez looks like Brook Lopez, but like that's expected.
Him and his 3 rebound a game have an ass. So let's transition out of this. What do we got? Raptors for me.
I got Raptors 5.
I got Raptors.
I'm gonna give the Nets a game.
I'm not that nice.
I think, maybe LeVert goes off for a game. Nurse rests some of his guys a little bit more than normal, but I'm gonna give him a game here.
I'm not. as we spin it forward, one of my favorite series,
I can't
the
stand this
3-6 in the Western Conference. You can't stand this series. What is
series.
there not to like about this series?
Both these teams have been absolute nightmares to gamble on.
I
They
hate
have
you.
they have been the
I
most
hate you.
Jekyll Hyde teams that I've ever witnessed. You know,
Dog.
you have one oh, let me tell you, because they ruined a nice $400 for me, actually, this matchup when they went to double overtime. But
Oh, hey,
I
great game,
I
by
had
the way.
I had the under on that game, and it lost
Great,
because they went to overtime.
great game, by the way. Only
Spider
double
Mitchell was
overtime game in the
incredible.
bubble, by the way. But that
Spider
series
Mitchell was
sucks.
incredible. But um, the issue with the Nuggets, they lack the ability to close games.
They lack that experience in crunch time, and those guys that have
Yeah.
logged experience in crunch time. Guess what? Paul Millsap, you don't count.
No, he shouldn't
You
even be in
don't
the,
count.
the, the lineup. And then you have the Jazz who lack the ability to score.
And then not only lack the ability to score, but when they go on droughts, they're droughts.
They
Like
can hang.
when they go cold, they are playing freeze tag, my dude.
Yep.
Like they go cold. They go
Yep.
on runs where they don't score for a fat fucking minute. And that is definitely troublesome when playing a team that can score at a clip like Denver.
Yep. And I'm gonna actually write something on here as my X factor.
This man improvising on the spot. The X factor in what? The series?
This series, it's gonna come down to, I think, one guy, and that's MPJ.
And I think
Because
if you're giving out an all bubble team and you need to have a sixth man, he's my sixth man.
I don't
He's been
know,
tremendous.
without MPJ, I don't know if because first off, like, Will Barton should have lost his starting spot in these these games. I don't know. Like, I think it comes down to him because there's one thing that they're lacking, and it's that Jamal Murray is good. He's awesome.
He's pretty good at basketball.
But what the Jazz have, like that Jazz Nuggets game, I think was the perfect example of what the Nuggets are lacking. Because I at one point I think they were down 7 with like 2 minutes left, and they were just fouling and hitting shots and hitting shots. You had Conley hit that nice 3, and then Mitchell was just being a fucking ice cold.
And I think we saw that a lot in the Blazers series last year, which, dude, unbelievable series last year. And we saw a lot of games that fell to the detriment of Denver come in those exact situations where they need just a bucket to push them over the edge late and nobody can give it to them. I mean, put yourself in Mike Malone's shoes. You're down 1. You got 6 seconds left. You're drawing up an inbound play. Who's taking the last shot? Who?
It's Jokic. There's nobody else. I mean, Jokic,
how confident are you in that? What's he? I mean, like, what's he gonna do? Jokic is as tremendous a player in the NBA that there is today that, in my opinion, struggles at times creating his own shot. He's huge. He's a mule. That's understandable. And he's good for so many other things. However, based on the conversation we're having now and based within the parameters in which they could have problems, you're going to need a guy that can create his own shot and create his own opportunities late in games.
Yep.
And if Denver gets past this series, guess who you're staring in the face? Hey, it's the Clippers. Not going to be an easy series. No. And you're going to need that guy. Spinning it forward a little bit for the Nuggets because, I mean, I believe there are a lot of people. No, like, let's spin it farther forward. There are a lot of people, including myself, that believe a Denver Nuggets roster, the way it is built right now, going forward next year and beyond, with Michael Porter Jr. playing, let's even say at the level he's playing right now. Going into the bubble, when I was having this conversation, I was saying at even close to what we thought he could be. I'll even take it further. How he's playing right now. And Bol looking the way that he looked. How are you going to tell me that they cannot contend for championships?
I think Gary Harris has to go.
If Gary Harris is going to be a casualty to keep that core together and include MPJ and Bol, see ya.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Bye.
I just don't.
Have a good one.
This is like, out of all the picks I had to make, like this was the hardest and like my least favorite.
I think the Nuggets win this series. I think this is going to be a typical 3-6 matchup, though. It's going to be a war. It could go 7 games, and I do believe it will go 7 games. Again, though, like we talked about with the Lakers, there's a real, actual perception, not perception. There's a real and actual thing to be made of being drained in the playoffs as a roster and as a team. This is the exact and perfect type of series that could create that problem for the Nuggets. They could be just gassed when the series is over because the Jazz do that to you. They make up for, as we've said, inability to score offensively at times. They can lock down on defense.
Yep. Quinn Snyder is a great defensive coach, which
he's
is
a great coach
because he's a Budenholzer apprentice. So it's like
he's a great coach.
I think he's the only guy out of like Bud's camp that's like a defensive specialist.
Right. Those defensive specialists, man. That old Tom Tibbs.
Fuck. Don't get me started.
So I got the Nuggets.
I got the Nuggets in 7. I mean,
cool.
But that's all contingent, I think, on Michael Porter. And I got the Clippers going all for it.
Man, Matt Ramey, shout out in the comments asking us, and we're making him wait on this answer. The Clippers for me. No doubt about it. And we'll get into that as it is 3:30 a.m. Central Time. Celtics, Sixers. No Ben Simmons completely changes the dynamic of this series. We could literally do an entire podcast on debating whether or not, like, the whole can Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid play together thing. Like, I mean, they can. Show me any evidence that proves that they can and win a championship. Show me. Where's it at?
I think Embiid's the centerpiece here.
And you have to move Ben. You have to move Simmons.
For Depot.
What is this Depot? Bro, every trade has to involve Victor Oladipo.
You could tell me, like, just about, I could easily say about 5 teams where I would say Oladipo is the need. Because out of all the guys on the indie right now, he's the one guy who doesn't fit. Like,
I could say 30 teams in the NBA have LeBron James as a need, or Luka Doncic as a need,
like a feasible need. You know, like Depot's a free agent after the season. He might get moved because he ain't going back to Indy. I'll tell you that much.
How do you know that,
dude? Did you see him playing the 3? He hated it. He was doing it because he had to.
And again, we touched on it. It's not his natural position.
No.
So, I mean, that reluctance to move to a different position, especially in the NBA, and especially when you've had the success that Oladipo has had, can be troublesome. But, you know, like, as far as the Sixers roster is constructed, it's a pretty painful pill to swallow to look yourself in the mirror having gone through #the process.
Mm-hmm.
And having what they have to show for it.
It's a treasure trove of assets at this point that, like, just don't fit with each other. I think that's more on an indictment of Colangelo rather than Hinkie.
Well, but Colangelo took his, little cyanide exit and bounced by way of the burner account. And that's a different, very entertaining conversation. But here's the thing, bro. Philadelphia has a bigger problem internally, and we're talking about a word that you and I both use and many people in sports pundits use: culture. There's a major culture problem within the 76ers organization, and I'll make it very simple. What do you want your best player to exemplify to the rest of your roster? That he will do whatever is that he'll do whatever's necessary to win a championship, whatever is necessary to better yourself. Real quick, to better yourself and create that culture in which everyone follows the lead of bettering yourself. Ben Simmons is in year 5? Yeah. And his jump shot is still not what I'm getting at is how as an organization and as a potential contender level organization with the way that roster, how do you look, if you're Brett Brown, at any other player and tell him, you need to improve at this, you need to get better at this, when your best player and leader has not done that? How do you do that? I think there's a good chance if they exit and don't make this series competitive, he could absolutely be fired.
So while you pin it on Simmons, I just don't know if like there are many players that can coexist with Embiid because, well, I just feel like Embiid has this alpha male personality on the court, but he exudes this sort of lackadaisical sort of like I'm just here for the lulls
But is
mentality.
but is that a personality?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
Or
But like I look you look at like some of those other guys like the CP3s, like the you know, the Bronze, the even like Draymond. Do you think Draymond is not gonna put Embiid in a headlock in the middle of
it's
a practice?
it's a mentality thing, and I'm not saying at all that Joel Embiid is a zero dark 30 mode locked in by
Yeah.
any stretch of the imagination. I think,
But he's been balling, but
I think to the team's detriment, Embiid kind of fits in that Simmons comment. We don't talk. We put Embiid in like that Ben Roethlisberger side of the fence, where
but
it's
he's
like
the heart of the team.
not really exactly. Again, furthering my point, the two players that the quote unquote process was literally laid to gain are the two players that are at the very core of the problem I lay out, which is I'm giving you something to improve on. Ben Simmons' jump shot, really Embiid, just like a work ethic type of thing, and you are not doing that.
Yep,
What
I
type
agree.
of message does that send in your locker room? Not a good one, and that's what creates it all. Like all of the tumult, the tumultuous problems, the headlines, the reports, the controversy. Look no further than the fact that your best players and leaders refuse to take the steps necessary to put the team in the best position to win a title. Anyway, we're talking way too much about the team that I think you and I presumably have are going to lose.
Yep.
A lot of people like Boston as a dark horse in the East going into the playoffs.
They're in the Nuggets category for me.
I think Jason Tatum is undoubtedly a top 5 player at his position in the league at this point. I think he has proved that.
I don't think Jason Tatum's their best player, though.
Who do you think is Kemba?
Jaylen Brown.
I mean, look, I love me some Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown has been tremendous in the bubble, particularly. Not going to go as far as saying he's better than Jason Tatum.
In full package speaking. Like
Still
in terms of being able to play defense and just doing things without the ball, Jaylen Brown is way better. Whereas like Jason Tatum has to exist. Like he can play off the ball at times, but he's more of your ISO sort of like traditional small forward, kind of like in the mold of Melo, and like he reminds me a lot of Melo in a lot of his play style.
And you have a problem?
No, I love Melo, but I just think Jason Tatum is sort of just way more dynamic and way more apt to the currency.
Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown, I'm sorry. What did I call him?
Dude, I mean, there are very few rosters in the NBA that have hit, and I mean hit, on draft picks consistently like the Boston Celtics have.
You have as many draft picks as they have. Like, I mean, it's hard not to get a couple.
Finessing. Yeah. Danny Ainge for like 3 years straight. Finessing. Just finessing every GM in the league. That's how they got all those picks. And it's created the roster that they have now. Brad Stevens, one of the best coaches in the NBA. This series, if Simmons were on the floor, all bets are off. If you put a gun to my head and made me pick a series that was going 7, it would be this one if Simmons was going to be on the floor. I'm going to take the Celtics in 5.
I got them in 5 right now without Simmons. Yeah, I agree.
So Celtics in 5.
I don't like the Sixers. They don't look good. They look like they hate each other. Like it looks like a roster that genuinely does not like Tobias Harris is in a different place. And I don't like Tobias Harris as a player personally. I think like in the role that he's in, it's too much volume.
There's a problem though if you being Tobias Harris, if Tobias Harris is your number 3 option,
and he's scoring,
that's a pretty good problem to have. It's a pretty good problem to have if Tobias Harris is your number 3. But it's not resulting in, I mean, Chris Middleton, is he better than Chris Middleton?
No.
Okay, is he better? Who's the 3rd best player on the Bucks?
Brook Lopez?
Is he's better than Brook Lopez, right?
Yeah.
Like talent-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, so, by the transitive property, why the Sixers not the 1 seed? Yet it doesn't work like that. But all
No,
I'm
yeah,
saying
that's
is,
fine.
all I'm saying is, if he's your third worst player, or if he's your third best player, you should be better than the 6th seed. Moving on, Thunder Rockets.
I love this, and I
I
hate it.
mean, coming from a guy that hates the Thunder and definitely doesn't like the Thunder at all.
Who, me?
No, I'm speaking very sarcastically about myself. The Thunder are going to win this series if Russell Westbrook misses 2 games. If he misses 1 game, it's gonna get close. We do not know the circumstances regarding and or the timetable that he's on. It's been very vague, and they're keeping that information very close, and understandably so if you're the Rockets. But I have seen this before. Like as a Thunder fan, this is not only the first time I'm going to have to watch an NBA playoffs where Russell Westbrook is not wearing a Thunder jersey. He's playing against my goddamn favorite team. I know
in a different place.
I know what happens with Russ being a supporter of said team when he gets hurt and when he has these timetables. They're not always what the report says they are. And his injuries are not always as insignificant as they seem. When he was out for the entire playoffs in 2013, when Pat fucking Beverly ran into him and tore his meniscus, he finished that game and had a double-double. Report came out next day, he had a torn meniscus. Like, what I'm saying is, he'll never lead you to believe he's as hurt as he actually is. And if he comes back early in this series, there's going to be a hovering question around what percent is he at? Is he at 100%? Is he at 80%? What percentage of Russell, if he comes back in game 2, what percentage of Russell do the Rockets need Westbrook to be at to win this series?
I agree. Well, I feel like this series, I think, defines how the Western Conference shakes out, because I think there's something to be said about the shift that the Rockets made after they traded Capella. Going off when your center 6'6" and you're running this small lineup based on switching and movement, and they got out rebounded by the Bucks and won that game, for instance, right? 30 boards. That's
smashed
insane.
On the glass.
Insane. Russell Westbrook has become their leading rebounder. Insane. He's on like this like Dennis Rodman take where like he's understanding the trajectory of the ball off the rim and grabbing boards. Like the level of IQ he has is incredible. But in terms of matchup, I think this is the best and the worst case scenario for both teams, right? You have the Thunder that have had a historical offensive efficiency when they have their 3 guards on the floor, and Schroeder, Westbrook, and Shai. And then you have the Rockets, who are employing this sort of small ball, new school lineup where
the new kids on the block.
Yeah, the tallest guy on their team is Covington.
Trying to be the smartest guy in the room, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's what the Rockets are.
And it's super interesting because defensively, they've actually been pretty fucking good. It's on the rebound aspect that they've been bad. So when you take that into account, now you have a bunch of guys who are much more mobile and able to switch and guard. Pretty much every guy on their roster can guard all 5 positions. I mean, we're not going to, or all 4 rather, we're not going to put, we're not going to expect 30 points out of Steven Adams. So, he's out of the equation offensively at least.
Well, we're for sure going to count on a 67% clip from the field, because every time he palms that ball, he's gamming that bitch
easily. But
every time.
In terms of employing that sort of 3-guard set that's moving the ball, being fast, and shooting at a high percentage, this is going to be an incredible matchup because one of these guys is getting taken out of the game by Covington. I don't know who, but Covington is taking somebody out of the game. And then you have PJ Tucker. I'm
glad you brought Covington up because you actually wove your entire point really, really well by bringing him up at the end, because by way of that trade and by way of the roster due to that trade shifting into this, okay, here's how we're going to play basketball look at us, nobody plays like us mode, because that's what they did.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen without Robert Covington being included,
No.
because Robert Covington is the X factor defensively.
Yep.
Robert Covington is a Swiss Army knife to an extent offensively. He can step
Mhm.
out, he can hit that shot behind the 3-point line, and he gives you, like I said, a guy that you can rely on defending on the wing, defending on the interior. Uh, this roster and this little project the Rockets have going on right now, Robert Covington was the key
Mhm.
to said process.
And he was
And
just
make no
burning
mistake
bench
about it.
time on the Timberwolves, which bothered
Yeah.
me because I thought he was incredible in the Sixers.
I mean, we're talking about the a
The
brilliantly run
brilliance of
organization.
Tibbs.
You know, Johnny Flynn and Steph Curry was still on the board.
Well, they
Yeah,
took 2
guys.
guys. They took 2. They took,
Rubio, and
and
then
Johnny Flynn,
Johnny
yeah.
Flynn. I criticized the Johnny Flynn one way
Yeah,
more.
Rubio's understandable.
Well, yeah, not only that, but that year, Thunder fan right here, who had the 4th overall pick, which they took James Harden, I was crying for Rubio. I wanted Rubio. Glad I was wrong. I was also in 7th grade.
Yeah, fair. I don't know. I think this series actually defines the playoffs right here, because
In the
both
Western
these teams.
Conference,
Yeah,
it'll shake things out and shuffle that deck accordingly, so because the Rockets give the Lakers a look when you look at it on paper that really gets you thinking.
Yep.
Really
And then the
gets you thinking.
Thunder also, because I mean they're going to employ 3 guards, probably 70% of their sets, right?
Gonna try to.
And yeah, and Schroeder was an incredible yield for trading Melo to the Hawks. So yeah, I mean they got Schroeder out of that, and Schroeder turned out to be this magical thing that they just sort of like walked in on.
I mean, he should be. Even though he's not going to win it, like he should be 6th man of the year.
I agree. Completely agree. Lou will probably get his 13th.
I think Montrezl Harrell might even get it.
I saw that, which would be incredible. I don't think I've ever seen like a power forward or center get like a 6th man.
Shifting of the game. What's your prediction? I got the Thunder in 7.
I picked the Thunder are my number 1 pick for the series. They're not the favorites in terms of like Vegas odds, but I do have the Thunder in 7 as well. I think this is going to be probably, I would say, between this and Portland is going to be my favorite series to watch.
My favorite series to watch is the last one in the first round. And as I said, it is 3:45 a.m. Central Time, 4:45 a.m. in the East. So once we make these picks, we're going to zoom through the rest of the way until we get to an eventuality that is the Los Angeles Clippers winning the NBA title, as we said. Anyway, my favorite series in the first round is Heat Rockets. Why? TJ Warren v. Jimmy Butler for the World Basketball League Championship. What's up?
Is he still hurt, or is he gonna?
Who?
TJ Warren. Actually, before we even get into the matchup, I feel like you should take the floor here and
Warren looked real hurt when he dropped
elaborating.
3, right?
Yeah, I was hurt. He ruined that game for me, but
I know he did.
I want you to take the floor here, and I want you to just start to talk about Mr. CC Warren, cash consideration Warren.
TJ Warren, right, is on the all bubble team. Okay.
Yeah.
Your all NBA comparison to what the 5 best players on the floor in the NBA were throughout the bubble. He's on that list. Damian Lillard, Luka Doncic, Devin Booker, TJ Warren. 5th one slipping me. You could put Kristaps in there. Honestly, that's a guy that probably comes to mind. He's playing out of his mind. Let's remember too, though, and also put into perspective, when the Pacers lost Sabonis for the season, that's a moment where you look up, you see that news, and you're like, oh man, don't know if they're going to be able to recover from that. Weirdly, they're playing
5-1, right?
They're playing arguably better without him. Like they look good. They look in sync. Would they obviously rather have Sabonis? Yes. Are they going to miss him tremendously in this series? Yes. Do I think they're capable of winning it without him, though? Yes, I do. Yeah. I think Indiana, again, another team like we've touched on, Mavericks. I put them right there on that Maverick. Like with the roster they have at full health, piece away.
I love Brogdon. Brogdon is one of my favorite players in the NBA.
He's an enigma when he's on the floor.
Everything I won a lot of bets with Brogdon, just taking like combined lines. I love Brogdon. Brogdon has the ability. He stuffs the stuff he stuffs the staff sheet, and he's good at everything. Like there's not really many things he's good. He's not fast, but like he's very quick.
Let's also
And
point out that his best attribute doesn't show up in the stat sheet, and that is sitting down and playing defense.
yep,
That is his best attribute.
he's massive. He's a big motherfucker. The thing about Warren though is that yes, for Warren, Sabonis going down was the biggest thing because it allowed him to slot down to the 4. And so with him at the 4, you have Depot at 3, and then Brogdon and Holiday playing point and guard, well, the guard positions. It sort of allowed him to kind of space the floor a little bit better and not have to be as aggressive on defense, because that was his biggest knock when he was playing with the Suns. And even when he was in college, was that defensively he was kind of out of it. And
He was a dog at NC State, though.
Yeah, I mean, he shot. I think he shot like 45% at NC State.
He was a dog at NC State.
I mean, he averaged like 16 or 17 on the Suns, but he just wasn't sort of the guy who. It was probably a culture thing, maybe. But when they slid him into that 4 slot, it really sort of unlocked this level of his game that just hadn't been seen. And I don't know if he's got like that assassin's blade, but he's got the ability to take over a game, which was, I don't know, man. How many games did he have over 35 points? Like 3 or 4?
Warren, I think 3. And like pulling up from absurd distances from the hoop and just
game distance.
Bang, bang, bang. Like pulling up with the green light, shifting to the Heat. Here's where they undeniably get the check in the row of boxes in this series. Depth. This is one of the deeper teams in the Eastern Conference. The Heat can also beat you in a variety of ways, which is what makes them dangerous. Duncan Robinson is on that. If he's not on that Curry Lillard level green light, like when I mean his range is when he pulls in the parking lot. Like this guy can shoot from anywhere at any time, and he's probably going to drain it in your face. He doesn't dribble, dude. He doesn't put the ball on the floor. He catches and shoots. And he's very good at it. Who else you got coming off the bench? If Ja Morant and Zion Williamson don't exist, you very possibly Rookie of the Year, Kendrick Nunn. You have Goran Dragic. You have Kelly Olynyk. You have Andre Iguodala. Like this is a team that gets bodies on the floor, and that's going to be huge for them if they want to win this series.
I think one of the bigger things, I loved like Hero during the season. Hero is fucking incredible. But
there's a guy who how could I have omitted him? He had 30 the other night.
The team as a whole has this sort of Pat Riley mentality to it that you can see. Like there is something to the culture of the Heat, and you can see a level of like joy and locked in that Jimmy Butler has when he is on the floor. Like he has this team built around him, and they see him as their leader, and they follow him, and they all have this fuck you to him. Like Tyler Hero has a fuck you mentality.
Oh, bro.
And I love it. It is,
bro. That's been a thing. Like he was one of, by no means am I saying his high school hoop mixtape is going to be the one that makes you like sit there like for 6 minutes. But what was so enjoyable about watching it for me, whenever I first got my first look on Hero when he was in high school, was this dude drips fuck you out of his pores when he plays basketball, and I'm all in on it. Like you hit the head on the nail. He plays with the exact type of mentality that a team led by a guy like Jimmy Butler does. Jimmy Butler is one of his biggest fans. I've heard Butler go on the record multiple times about how much he loves that guy,
because he knows in the end of the game he's got 2 guys on him. He tosses that ball to Hero. Like Hero's ready to shoot that ball.
Guess what? If someone's on him, Duncan Robinson's on the floor too. He's good at shooting threes. Again, like, you know, I want to pick the Pacers here. They're the trendy pick for sure. And like, you know, a lot of people are going to be. Same goes for the 4-5 in the Western Conference too, because I mean, the Russell Westbrook being the X factor that it is, injury rather being the X factor that it is. Don't get me wrong. The Thunder are going to be like the popular pick in this series as a result. The Pacers, on the other hand, are going to be the popular pick in this series as a result of recency bias.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that is applicable to results or not, again, I think depth is what makes the difference in this series. And this is potentially going to be my favorite series when it's all said and done. It's my favorite series going into it. But I do think the Heat close it out in 6.
I think I agree with that one. I have the Heat. They were yeah. Outside of Portland, which the odds weren't out yet. These were essentially my picks for the 5 available. Or 7 available.
So what do you got?
Heat,
what's your
Thunder,
pick?
Celtics. I got Heat in 6. I'm with you.
So on Davidson's side of the bracket, we fill this in kind of on the spot. Just for visual aesthetics.
Do not be surprised if Portland beats the Lakers. I'm sorry.
Okay. I will be. We have Milwaukee. We have Milwaukee versus Miami. You as well. We have, and on the other side, we have Toronto v. Boston. Chalk in that sense. And then team took his brain pills today. Has Lakers under.
I'll just throw OKC in it.
There we go. Gotta love Google Sheets, right? You are
years ago, if somebody was watching this happen, they would be freaked the fuck out. Like they have a virus on their computer.
Portland. And then Denver Clippers.
Interesting matchup.
But the Clippers win, right?
Yeah, I think so. Unless one of those guys get hurt, maybe it's a different story. But
Milwaukee and Miami, who wins how many games? Give me the Bucks. Give me the Bucks in 5. I think that's a bad. I think it's a really bad matchup for Miami.
I think you can go Bucks 6 for me.
Six.
Yeah, I got Bucks in 6.
Toronto and Boston.
Toronto in 5.
Got Toronto in 7. Lakers Thunder for me. Lakers in 6. Blazers Thunder for you.
Portland in 5.
Clippers in 5 for me against the Nuggets.
6. There's no way Doc is playing all those guys over and over. They're going to give up a game or 2.
So in the Davidson Baker and Eli Milligan laced Eastern Conference Finals, we have the Milwaukee Bucks and the Toronto Raptors. You tip your hand as to where you're going. You like the Raptors. Tell me why.
Raptors in 7. Raptors are the best defensive team in the Eastern Conference. They don't need to rely on 1 or 2 guys to win a game. They have 7 guys who can win a game. They are, I think, the deepest team in the Eastern Conference. They don't have a genuine star, which can work to their detriment in the event that Giannis begins to go crazy, which he's very likely to. But just judging the way that guys like Chris Middleton have looked, just completely mediocre. It doesn't look good for Milwaukee. So I'm going to go with, I'll have Toronto in 7.
Toronto at the full distance for Mr. Eli Milligan, earning a trip to their second consecutive NBA Finals. Davidson does not feel that the Six will be as fortunate. I like Milwaukee in 6. By the way, yes, I agree with you that they're the deepest team in the East. I think the team that they are hypothetically playing in this matchup, though, would have something to say about your moniker you gave to them as the best defensive team in the East.
I think they were number 1 in terms of defense, but
I thought Milwaukee was. I mean, maybe they're 1-2, maybe they're both top
they just
3.
don't look
Both
like
teams can guard.
Right.
Both teams can guard. That's for sure. That series might be ugly. Yeah. Like as far as offense. Yeah. All LA Western Conference Finals for me and many others. And I like the Clips in 6. We have Portland and the Clippers for you.
As much as I would love to see Portland go all the way, they have the momentum. They look great. They are my favorite team right now to watch. I don't know if what the Clippers can just simply do to them defensively, they will be able to overcome, because the Clippers have the ability to simply just take Dame and CJ or Melo out of the game. Depending on who's hot in that aspect, Nurk would have to carry the series. It's just not happening. I got Clippers in 6. Maybe even 5, actually. Go 5. Clippers
maybe even less.
Yeah, I would say Clippers in 5.
So we have...
And Pat Bev, no less.
Pat Bev could get picked off by a sniper. I'll let you go first. Raptors, Clippers, who wins how many games? What's the X factor?
There's no X factor. It's the Clippers sweep.
Interesting. Because I'm taking a similar approach.
Despite how great I think Toronto is, they don't have what the Clippers have, and that's Kawhi. And also Paul George when Kawhi's on the bench resting. There's something about the guy who can simply take over a game and put it in his pocket and also not lag on defense. And that's what they've been resting all season to do. Like Kawhi was locking down guys last season. Like he was pacing with Giannis in a way that you really didn't see. He was out dueling Ben Simmons, who's an all NBA defensive player. Like Kawhi is a special player, and I think 15, 20 years from now, we're going to sit there and think about him like he's one of those top 5, top 10 guys who've ever played.
And a top 5, top 10 blunder by the Indiana Pacers for letting him walk out the door before he could even arrive. I like the Clippers in my hypothetical NBA Finals to defeat the Milwaukee Bucks in 5. Kind of beating a dead horse here. They're the deepest team in the NBA. On paper, I guess we're going to find out, especially in a series like they've got in front of them against a team that could score like the Mavericks. We're going to find out real quick what level at which they are ready and going to be actively willing participants in regarding to guarding people, sitting down and playing defense, particularly on the wings, which, again, on paper, they appear to have an advantage over every team in the league in that regard. I know that the guy to my left has Blazer fever, but speaking just from generality and from what most people and most of the pundits are assuming is going to take place, we're going to get an all LA Western Conference Finals. And I think that's what many people are expecting. What puts and rightfully so, many people are expecting the winner of said series to be the eventual winner of the Larry O.B. What puts the Clippers ahead of the Lakers, and much more so with the bubble, Avery Bradley could be a perfect and shining example I could go off of. However, things we touched on, age, the ability to get back into playing shape, like high-level NBA playoff mode basketball. It has taken the Lakers longer, not only than the Clippers, but than most of the league to get back to full speed in that sense. And I expect that lag to kind of carry over in a sense where the Clippers could be firing on all cylinders from game one, and many people expect them to, including myself. Too many boxes are checked in their favor. I like the Clippers. I think Steve Ballmer will be a very happy man here come a couple of months from now.
Yeah, there's really not much to be said about the Clippers. They're definitely a wild card in that we don't know how they're going to handle this shift of gears. But they're the best team in the league. Just in terms of just sheer roster, there's no other team that can do what they can do on both the two-way level and then like what the Lakers can do in terms of they were the second, I think, best defensive team. And offensively, the Lakers suck. They're bad. I think they're averaging like 106 points a game.
And when LeBron is not on the floor, they look like they don't know what to do. They look like they have no plan. They look like they have no sets. They look like a bunch of guys playing ISO ball when it's unorganized. Yeah.
You question if Vogel's really that good of a coach, or it's just LeBron?
I don't.
I don't. Vogel's a good coach.
I do.
You think
I do. Yeah. I think a lot of the work that he did in Indiana, while obviously Paul George is attributed to a lot of that, I think that, I mean, if Jim Boylan was sitting in that seat, I don't think they're pushing the Heat to 7 games.
The Bulls fired 2 Jim Boylans in 10 years.
Insane. You couldn't write shit like that.
They are the same guy.
But equally as tragic.
Actually,
different
firing, Alvin Gentry.
Yes. So if there's any conversation I will gladly open the door for at 4:05 a.m. before we wrap this podcast up, it's this one. This story that surfaced today, obviously, of the New Orleans Pelicans dismissing head coach Alvin Gentry. There is no, from what I have seen on social media, there is no consensus lean on NBA Twitter. It's pretty 50-50. You either agree with it, agree with the state of the mindset as an organization that the Pelicans have with, hey, we're kind of disappointed, because here's the base of firing from what I understand. Kind of disappointed with the way the bubble went, rightfully so.
The best player out.
I don't know what people expected, really. Like, I don't know if people expected the Pelicans to all of a sudden just start beating everybody by 30. Like, I don't know what the bar was set at. However, they certainly underwhelmed. They were out of the playoff picture before every team in the West, not named the Sacramento Kings. And that laid the groundwork for the eventual dismissal of Alvin Gentry. Now, spin it forward. It goes without being said that this is a massive, massive week and a half ahead of the front office of the New Orleans Pelicans, because the nailing and or whiffing upon this hire could be a very, very integral, if not determining factor of if this team takes that next step with the youth on that roster.
I don't know if I think it just was more of a case of I didn't hire this guy.
It's very, very possible. That's a real thing in all sports.
But if they're hiring anybody not named Darvin Ham, then I'm completely out on the Pelicans.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but
I think Lou is the worst hire they can make.
Everything I've been reading is saying all arrows and signs are pointing towards Jason Kidd.
That's even worse. Actually,
do I love it? No.
In terms of culture, no. But in terms of development for the sake of Zion, then yeah, because Giannis isn't Giannis without Jason Kidd. That's a fact.
It is.
That's a sheer fact.
Everybody Giannis has said that.
You can give Budenholzer all the credit, but without Jason Kidd, Giannis is not Giannis. He put him in position at the one and said, this guy can play point guard. So
I think there's something to be said about that. And, you know, we still sit and here and find ourselves as, again, of the probably tens of thousands of text messages exchanged between you and I about sports. We have certainly been on the topic of Mark Jackson. Hey, when's this guy going to get a job, huh? Can this guy get a fucking job?
I don't think he's going to get a job.
Why the fuck not?
Because
tell me if you're a general manager in the NBA, what is deterring you from hiring or Mark Jackson and just settling for like let's say like Jacques Vaughn?
It has absolutely nothing to do with his ability. Well, it does a little bit in the sense that that last season with the Warriors, I think they were dead last in passes per game or possession. Mark Jackson isn't some offensive guru, though. You're not going to look at Mark Jackson and think this guy's going to change our offense. He absolutely implemented a level of confidence and also defense in the Warriors that transitioned to when Steve Kerr took over, because they were the number one defense 2 years in a row. But he doesn't fit the new age NBA. I think he's blackballed for the wrong reasons. Personally, I'm never going to put him in that tier of bad coach. But there's a lot of issues that happen behind those closed doors in San Fran, or Oakland rather, and a lot of culture things that the Warriors have let out, and they've, essentially put him out to dry that he's not going to get a job, at least for the near future. Maybe with the Bulls, but maybe.
I mean, that was what I was thinking. But I mean, what was that, dude? What are we now? Was that 6 years ago?
He was
5 years ago.
He had like a super toxic culture. Apparently, he put down the players. He was like there's a lot of things. There's a couple of articles I've read where I don't know if it's the front office demonizing him. I don't think Mark Jackson's a bad guy, but I just think once you get that blackball from a front office and they let everybody know, you don't want that guy. Exactly. You don't want to bring that into your team.
No question about it. My man, we have been on the air for 2.5 hours talking fights and talking basketball. It's 5:10 in the morning where you are. Yes. I don't think I need to explain how appreciative I am.
No.
But you and I could go all day, right?
No, this is therapy.
Oh, totally. Totally. That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to
the Lakers.
Oh, whatever, dude. Just a reminder, this podcast can be found anywhere that you listen to, whatever you want to call it. Your podcast, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. If you like content like this or spinning it forward, appreciate fantasy football, well, then I've got news for you. 2 of my 4 most played podcasts of all time out of the 80, now 81 that I have, are my last 2 fantasy football primers, scheduled for this week, more than likely Tuesday or Wednesday. We will be doing my fantasy football primer for this year, and I've put in a lot of work for it, and it's going to be badass, and I can't wait. So that is coming up this week. Contender Series. Look, dude, you want free money? Listen to my Contender Series previews.
How much have you won me today?
My record speaks for itself.
You won me $275 today.
I mean, I'm picking right in the past 3.5 weeks in UFC fights. I'm picking at a 72% clip. Guess what that means, dude? Bags of cash. Bags of cash.
More.
And stop giving out my picks for fucking free to everybody that asks. So yeah, if you like content like this, hit like, hit subscribe, hit whatever button is applicable on your podcasting service that brings you back if you do like the content. We will see you guys next week, this week, going forward. That is all for me. That is all for Mr. Milligan.
Hammer the over on the Portland
playoffs. And do not take this man's advice on the Blazers. On that, thank you everybody for listening and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for